Salmonati Academy is a place where young citizens from the continent gather to reach their potential. The academy is run by a meritocratic system, and those who don't reach the right level are mercilessly excluded. His name is Nozomu Bountis, and he entered this academy 2 years ago, along with his childhood friends, leaving everything behind, no regrets, in order to be here. His name is Nozomu Bountis, and 2 years ago he entered the academy together with his childhood friends, leaving everything behind with no regrets. His best friend since childhood was Ken Notice, and Lisa Hounds was his inseparable lover before entering the academy. One day, Lisa and her parents moved to Nozomu village. It was a small farming village on the outskirts of the country, with friendly relations with the neighboring kingdom, where life went on calmly and without excitement. One day Nozomu was fishing on the pond, and a girl came up to him and asked if he was free now. It was Louise Hounds. She said that if Nozomu wasn't too concerned, she would stay here and chat with him for a while. Then she gave him her name and said that it was very nice to meet him. Lisa has been traveling with her mother for a long time because her father passed away unexpectedly. Mom decided that it was better to return to the small village to raise Lisa in peace. Nozomu asked Lisa if they had been to any interesting places during their travels. Lisa said that her father was an adventurer who traveled all over the world, facing dangers. For Nozomu, there was no desire to risk his life for adventure. But as a boy, he was drawn to stories about heroes of the past, and Lisa's story delighted him. Although this was their first meeting, their relationship started out as if they were childhood friends. They lost track of time telling stories about heroes, and as they matured, they became more than just friends as teenagers. Lisa wanted to leave the village and become an adventurer. Just like her father, the girl wanted to enter the Salmonati Academy. Nozomu decided to go there with her. Lisa liked it, but she was worried about the fate of his family. After all, Nozomu was from a simple family of farmers and was also an only child, so for them he was irreplaceable, and his father would most likely be against his decision. Nozomu seriously told Lisa that if the girl he loved wanted her dreams to come true, then he would be her support and go with her. The girl asked him would he do this for her. Lisa was happy and thanked Nuzrama as she threw herself into his arms. Then Nozomu heard the bell ring and fell back into his reverie. This country was in a state of disarray due to the demon invasion, and even after 20 years, looking back, the people wished that this would not happen again. They opened an academy that was built as a result of the joint efforts of all the authorities on the continent, and every state openly allocated funds for it to prevent any kind of recurrence disasters in the future. The academy accepts everyone who wants to participate, regardless of their social status. If the candidate makes an effort or has an innate talent, they can stay as long as they meet the minimum requirements. And if they graduate from the academy, they will be offered a quiet, prosperous life. But if a student starts falling behind in his class, as Nozomu did, then he becomes an outcast and begins to receive unkind treatment. And although he was the best in his class, now his peers look down on him. It all depends on social status. All rights here are based on the scores displayed by these magic name tags. Nozomu now had a black name tag, and it was the lowest rank possible. His fellow students wondered what was wrong with Nozomu, why he still hadn't dropped out of school. Because in such a situation, a simple person would have given up long ago. They were annoyed that because of his pathetic appearance, they all looked bad, and so he should just leave. Everyone thought he was a pain in the ass. Many people said that Nozomu is the bottom of a garbage barrel and comes to class knowing that he is completely useless. Mars Dickens was an academy student with a violent temper, and he was constantly picking fights with anyone who might make him angry, and since Nozomu was the lowest ranked, he was his main target. He claimed that Nozomu the kid didn't want to talk to anyone because even his childhood friend, the red-haired princess, had abandoned him. And he still didn't want to wake up from his tiny, insignificant sleep without noticing anything around him. Mars pushed Nozomu to the floor and asked why he was ignoring him. Mars Dickens wanted to punch the young man, but at that moment the teacher came into the classroom and asked him what he was doing, to which Mars replied that he was giving this dumbass some good advice so that he could improve. The teacher said that whatever it was, they had to do their own things after class, and they were wasting his precious time, after which he ordered Mars to sit down in his seat. But Mars called the teacher a weed, and the teacher was forced to answer that if he was a weed, he could only imagine what kind of person he was. Abominations his disciples would learn from him. He had read that being a black-ranked teacher for such a long time had knocked out a couple of cogs. The teacher told Mars to come to his office after class and suggested that the lesson begin. He reported that magic is the process of enlarging one's own mental power, and by training one's mental power, they can cause magical elements to rise and manifest, creating various effects. While magic can be used to strengthen their own body, it can also affect the world around them, and need to use certain elements to strengthen their own body. Create spells to use them to your advantage. When using magic that affects the world around them, a large number of magical elements are usually used. This is usually called ritual magic, and originally they used ritual magic as a kind of offering to the gods to get rain for their crops. However, ritual magic is only one of the two modern magic methods. The other is magic spells, and it is used as a source for creating magic, and tomorrow's lecture will be devoted specifically to ritual magic. They will experiment with various catalysts to get specific magical results. Then the teacher turned to Nozomu Bountis and said that he was excused from participating in this event because he was a student with a black mark, and it would be a waste of time. But the young man replied that he would still be there, and then the teacher told him to stay on the sideline and stay away from other students. At the noise of the class, the teacher said that he didn't want to hear this from the rest of the class, and in his opinion, the difference between them and Nozomu is minimal at best. They are all useless black-stained marks. Lisa was given the nickname Red-Haired Princess at the academy and quickly ascended to the top, with no one standing in her way. Only Nozomu, as her lover at the time, was the center of attention to match her perfection. However, he couldn't live up to the expectations that were placed on him. After all, he wasn't a truly educated person. He also had never held a sword in his hands in his life before entering the academy, and he just didn't have the same aspiration as Lisa. He understood how big the requirements for attending this academy were, and it was no wonder that Nozomu quickly fell behind. But he never gave up and went ahead, fighting with all his might. He had friends and a girlfriend who were willing to help him, but most of all, Nozomu wanted to keep his promise to Lisa, and he still wanted to be her support. He wanted to become stronger. But then something happened to him. He couldn't develop his abilities any further, as if some huge handicap had been placed on him. The growth of cultivation stopped, and the people around him became more and more hostile, to the point that he was bullied every day. But Lisa was still by his side, and she increased her training in hopes that he would be able to cope again. Lisa wanted to be close to him, and so Nozomu pushed harder than ever. And that summer, during their first year at the academy, they were closer than ever before. But it was suddenly over. Lisa told him that they should stop all this because it was useless, and she said goodbye to Nozomu. Lisa had never shown him the slightest bit of disappointment before and had always been supportive. A rumor spread in the academy that Nozomu cheated on Lisa with another woman, and although he denied it, of course, no one believed him. Lisa was given the nickname Red-Haired Princess because it portrayed her beauty and skill, while he was just a loser with no future. And so when the rumors went full steam ahead, everyone treated him like trash. Nozomu no longer had any friends, no one to talk to. Many joined in Mars a constant bullying, and some even physically abused him. He tried to talk to Lisa, but she looked at him with a cold look full of hatred, and yet he took his classes seriously and trained until he couldn't move anymore. He still wanted to keep his promise. One day on the street, Nozomu saw Lisa with another man. It was his childhood best friend Ken Notice, with whom they were initially in the same category, but he had the fastest growth in the history of the academy. He was a quiet gentleman, and often took part in his and Lisa's training sessions. Ken comforted Lisa when she was depressed, and so they started dating soon after. At first, Nozomu was heartbroken, because to see Lisa smiling brightly next to his friend was unbearable. Even when it was only during training, it could be said that these two dominated all the other couples in show fights. Nozomu knew that he no longer had a place in Lisa's heart. In the training arena of the academy, the teacher informed the students that today they would be paired up for trial fights, but they were not free to choose a partner, and they would be assigned personally by him. They must use any amount of physical and magical power, but they must refrain from killing each other. He explained that Ki is a magic that focuses on improving physical movement and body strength, while magic requires divine power to produce an effect. Both forms are used in the Arkmil continent, and Arkadam City, which was built around Salmanati Academy, is a land of magical research, and all the ancient magic that was extracted from the ancient ruins was transferred here to be studied and passed on to students. Mars Dickens called out to Nozomu and said it looked like they were partners and urged him to get it over with. The Academy's training uniform is designed for combat. It also has some basic enchantments engraved on it, and yet it's not uncommon for students to wear extra layers for protection. Nozomu, for example, didn't wear any extra protective layers. The weapon of choice was a unique sword that came from an island country. The katana is a blade that specializes in sharp strikes against the enemy, and when used by swordsmasters, it can easily cut through even steel bars. But this is rare for students. It is not very common on the continent and is relatively rare, but this type of sword is what Nozomu is most compatible with, because it is difficult to cut through steel bars. Don't rely on any magic upgrades. Nozomu thought hopefully that with this blade, he might have a chance to expand his abilities, and if he couldn't use magic, then just focus on rough techniques. Just at this time, Mars impatiently asked him if he was going to fight. He stated that although it didn't matter to him, he was just trash at the bottom of the barrel anyway, and he was just wasting precious time fighting it. After that, he charged in. The two men converged in the middle of the arena, their blades striking sparks with a clang. Nozomu realized from the first minutes of the fight that his movements were too slow. Mars was clearly superior to him in this component of swordsmanship. However, Nozomu managed to repel the first attack of his opponent, and he prepared for further battle. They were once again locked in close combat, and so far, neither side could win. Mars told Nozomu that he didn't have much ability, and that it was time to end it. He might just have to give up. He used ki magic, which harnesses a person's life force and increases the user's physical abilities. Mars stated that he probably needs to discipline his opponent a little. His movement sped up, and the force of his punch increased. But Nozomu continued to defend himself. The young man's stubbornness irritated Mars, and he advised him to get out of Nozomu's sight as soon as possible. The opponents were getting closer, and in close combat no one wanted to give up. Nozomu felt his strength draining away, but he continued to strike and deflect his opponent's attacks with incredible stubbornness. Mars Dickens was running out of patience, and he wanted to get this man over with. As he leaped, the weapon fell out of Nozomu's hands, and Mars said that he was a very annoying opponent. Nozomu was lying on the ground, holding his wound, thinking that it was a useless fight. He was in a lot of pain. When Nozomu opened his eyes, he realized that he was in the academy's medical ward, and next to him was the school doctor, Norn Altina. She said that she had applied medicine to his chest and back, then asked Nozomu how he was feeling, and he said that he was just a little dizzy. He thanked the doctor for his help, because he was in this infirmary all the time and owed Miss Altina a huge debt. Just then, Henri Varere, the academy's 10th grade homeroom teacher, came in and asked how Nozomu was feeling. Norn asked Henri to use the honorary titles while they were at the academy, but the girl replied that there was no one here and she could address her as a friend. The young man reassured the teacher and said that he was all right, noticing that Henri was too close to him. Nozomu politely asked the girl to step back a bit, and the doctor assured Anshuri that the young man was fine. He had a few bruises on his chest and back and a slight concussion, but the pain would soon subside. Nozomu thanked the Norn and Henri for their concern, and told them that he had to go now, and Henri asked the young man if he was going to go to the forest. The teacher reminded Nozomu that it was dangerous. Even for nights, it was difficult to get in, and maybe he should go with the other students. However, Nozomu ignored all the protests, apologized, and left. He recalled how one incident caused him to fall to the bottom of his class, and he has been constantly ridiculed ever since, and it all started because of the ability he showed in his first year. Abilities are special skills that can be displayed by any creature, and to this day the Academy has not found a reason why humans are bestowed with abilities, although there are countless types of abilities, and they all have a distinct advantage. But in the case of Nozomu, this is a special ability. This ability suppression is a rare ability to manifest. It doesn't do him any good, but rather hinders him greatly. Although he can still use upgrades using items, magic, and kin, however, the effects of these upgrades are weaker compared to their full potential, which his ability permanently holds. While it varies, each person affected by this ability is almost permanently debuffed, but for Nozomu, the ability that is suppressed in them is physical abilities. Norn said that Nozomu always leaves immediately after his wounds heal for the forest, but he always goes alone, and thanks to Aniray, he gradually starts talking to her more and more, but his behavior does not change, and she is sure that Aniray will be able to crack his mental shield. She just needs to keep looking out, follow him. Andri replied that Nozomu says that teachers and students can't be anything more than just teachers and students, but she can't exactly help him when it comes to magic skills, so the best thing she can do is help him with technique. She's not exactly a swordswoman herself, but there was a point where Nozomu almost had the advantage with her technique, magic, and cues at the same time. Even if they're only ranked 10 students, many of them are still very skilled, and by the time they become third years, their grades usually reach sea level. This is the normal rank of most high-level adventurers, or at least someone equal to him. While he may not be trainable, his abilities actually seem to be higher than normal students. He just needs to be refined, and besides, his body is well trained. He is properly portioned and has no body fat, and upon close inspection, you can see that he has strict intensive training, and on top of that, his body is covered with countless scars, and it is sad to see him in such a state. Norn added that for this reason, she often finds herself thinking about quitting this job, because it hurts her to see someone so young go through something like this, and she tried to tell Nozomu that such circumstances are just not normal. Still, it seems that he is determined to achieve something, And Angri has noticed that she thinks Nozomu is at the limit of his height. But still, even with all the training that he was given here at school, I wonder if there is anything else that he can achieve just yourself. Spazim Forest is the city where Solmanati Academy is located. It is a deep forest that surrounds Arkazam. There is a wide variety of plants in this area, and there are students and ordinary citizens who earn a living by using monsters and collecting resources in the forest. But while a rich forest can be a blessing to humans, usually the richest forests are also home to powerful beasts, and every year at least a few people would die or go missing in the forest and never be found again. The great city of Arkazam was built about 10 years ago, and the Solmanati Academy was located in the center of the city, which is accompanied by the surrounding areas. The academy is considered auxiliary in Arkazam city, with the academy located in the center and the political and administrative offices responsible for running the city located in the northern part, meaning that only aristocrats and other high-ranking officials are allowed in this particular area. In the eastern part is the civic district, where student dormitories are located, and it also acts as a common residential area for residents of the city. The southern part is considered a commercial area. The city of Arkazam is unique, as its market is known for a variety of goods from all over the world. It is the lifeblood of the local economy. The southern part also includes the city's Adventurers Guild. Depending on the rank, students can also be allowed to participate in quests issued by the guild, and the western part of the city. This is where artisans from all over the world gather to hone their skills and practice their craft. A road runs through all parts of the city. The rest of the surrounding area is a dense forest, and this forest is known as the Spazim Forest. From the outside, it looks like a sea of trees, so it is also called the Empty Forest, as people who regularly go there get lost. And before the city was built, this area was an intermediate zone that was located between the Crematorium Empire and the Huarsuima Kingdom. Because of this, it became a neutral territory without a ruler. Many magical beasts roamed the forest, usually not appearing in the city's vicinity or on the roads, but mostly hiding in the depths of the forest. Nozomu uses both hands to wield his blade with confidence and determination. His rapid movements can create an advantage over the enemy, but it's still not enough. Kawaii is an instant jerk and a form of magic that provides powerful acceleration that can be as fast as blinking an eye. His opponent, making another lunge, noticed that he was still too slow. She showed him the Phantom Blade, a punch made up of compressed and dense Q, and added that it was quite a simple technique. But this is a universal attack that moves at an incredible speed, and the blade will travel dozens of meters by the time it is detected. Since the attack is made of compressed QE, it is very difficult to anticipate. Nozomu turned to the master and asked if she was trying to kill him, and she replied that if she wanted to kill him, it would have hit him while he was trying to escape, because he left himself exposed, dodging the attack, and this could have been the end for him. If this was a real life-and-death fight, she would have taken him down without hesitation. The master made a few false moves and approached Nozomu. The young man tried to unravel the maneuver of his master and protect himself from a cunning blow. But it was not so easy to decipher the attack of an experienced swordsman, and Nozomu was finished. Before the defeated Nozomu was the secret master of Lady Shino. Before the construction of the city, she went to these forests to hone her skills. Nozomu got to his feet and asked the lady to fight again, to which Shino replied that she understood the desire to continue it, but she offered to take something out of this defeat, because it is extremely important to find a gap in the opponent's defense. If he uses this idea correctly against the opponent, he can finish the fight in a matter of seconds. His last attack was nothing more than a failed attempt, so naturally she was able to anticipate his weak side. And since she could feel the movement of his body, Shino added that it was enough and it was late. It was time for dinner anyway, so he should bring them something to eat. Nozomu bowed respectfully and declared that he would do anything for the master. Nozomu went to carry out his mentor's orders. As Shino watched the young man leave, she thought that, even if it was so small, it still felt like he was making progress. Her first encounter with Nozomu was when she was in a rather dangerous part of the forest where people usually rarely went. When she was looking around, the sound of a blade swinging lured her inside. That's when she saw him training all by himself. She became curious, so she watched him for a while. Nim stepped out of the shadows and noticed the terrible state he was in. He had a pale and lifeless appearance. The skin on his hands was torn and peeling, due to the inflammation of his joints. He lost his balance whenever he swung the weapon. Obviously, the boy was tired from going too far. The fact that he was exhausted only accelerated his destructive state. Shino pointed out to the young man that it was pointless to try to train in this state, but he replied that he needed to get stronger because he was abandoned by his first love, and everyone treats him like complete garbage. He at least wants others to stop treating him so cruelly. so he should continue to train even though his abilities can't grow. Shino realized that this guy was ruining himself just to earn the respect of others. And it must be cruel if it made him act so desperately. It pained her to see his lifeless, bleary eyes, and it reminded her of the hungry beggar on death's door that she had met after leaving her native land. She had to try not to think about it. But seeing the same look from some young man was impossible. It just killed her inside. Then she saw that the youth was being attacked by demonic beasts that were obviously hunting him. They were man-eating beasts similar to ordinary dogs, which, as demons, were quite low-ranked. But even with a low rank, they could still kill it with a single bite. Shino decided that she should be honest with this child, even though so many beasts might just finish him off, since these demonic dogs looked as dangerous to him as a dragon in its current state. She wondered how she could get involved in something like this, unless she had the will to die. But still, if the boy was going to die, then at least he would die as a warrior. He can only die after learning how to swing his sword properly. It's been a long time since that day, and she's been trying to train the guy since he became a real monster. She tried to teach him the Phantom Blade skill, which produces a sharp blow of compressed Q that flies towards the enemy and, although the skill itself is considered basic, a true master can turn it into the most deadly weapon. A master like her can destroy most opponents with this skill alone. In fact, her blade is so strong that it can cut through a piece of iron as if it were paper. However, Nozomu's blade isn't as strong as hers, but his blade is just as sharp and solid, and come to think of it, his abilities are completely sealed. It's only a matter of time before he surpasses hers. With such strength, she was sure that the reason Nozomu couldn't improve his skills in the academy was because of his suppressed skills, which the school pays special attention to, teaching students who already have these skills in mind, and to make up for this shortcoming, made the youth focus on swordsmanship instead of on his own control of ki, even though the skills she taught him are extremely focused and strong. Using them in battle in the academy would still be incredibly difficult. But if he wanted to show off his true strength, Nozomu must first learn many different ways to use these techniques without relying on ki. But first they must create his own physical strength, otherwise he will simply be swept away by anyone he fights. Nozomu's core has already been broken once, and it's obvious that he's avoiding reality by training recklessly. It's also obvious that he's trying to escape from who he is as a person. But not only is this the main reason for his social anxieties, he deliberately isolates himself. And although running away from society cannot cause judgment, once he escapes from his reality and finds himself in a new one, it will be almost impossible to return. For this reason, she decided that it would be better to help him, and decided to call their training an escape. Although she may not be fully qualified to teach Nozomu as an apprentice, but with this, she can rest easy knowing that she left him everything she learned over the years, and thus, when she will really leave the guy, he will be able to free himself from the chains that bind him. Meanwhile, Nozomu was still searching for something to eat. But until now, he had only seen rats, when he heard an explosion similar to magic, a term that is used to refer to spiritual powers, an analog of ki that has existed for centuries. From the sound of it, Nozomu believed that he was dealing with a beast-type demon that was different from the demonic dogs he had already fought. So he decided to see what kind of demon he was dealing with now. They were demonic bears. They don't usually go in pairs, so it was possible that they were brothers. This unique type of red fur could not be confused with anything. Moreover, the fur itself is as hard as any shield, and bears themselves are a threat. In order to take one alone requires a significantly powerful adventurer, and ordinary soldiers have no chance of defeating such creatures. It would take at least 5 Nozomu-level people to defeat these 2 bears. Then Nozomu saw that the one fighting the beasts was the girl he had seen before. She was in the same year as him, but she was ranked several times higher than his, and she was one of the best students in their school year. She is known as the Midnight Princess, due to the fact that her hair was as dark as the midnight sky, and her name was Iris Dina Franchild. The second girl was a well-known powerful sorceress in the academy named Thelma Lime, who already surpassed the teachers in magic power. While fighting the magic bears, she used Wind Vortex, a magic spell that creates a wind vortex that pierces through the opponent, and this type of spell is considered a mid-level spell. This Thelma was known as the Minstrel of the Four Winds. Iris Dina Franchild and the infamous tired but powerful enchantress. They were both at the top of the academy, and it is unknown how much power they used to destroy these creatures. The technique Thelma used was incredibly powerful. Even without any modifications or Q boosters, it had tremendous magic power. Its primal magic abilities were incredible. These two girls faced off against strong and treacherous magical beasts with great courage. Iris also had a unique ability that allowed her to cast attacks and spells without chanting instant cast. However, the situation was somewhat more serious than it might have seemed at first. No one noticed that there were not two bears, but three. Nozomu had only a fraction of a second to act and come to the girl's aid. This isn't entirely different from when Nozomu used his own Phantom Blade. However, if he were to compare their power levels, then the master is way ahead of him. However, Kui abilities are something that should not be taken lightly. Due to his suppressed abilities, everything he does is greatly weakened, and his body is still at its limit. Since he had that training battle with his master, however, he made it in time, and Thelma thanked Nozomu for help. Iris also thanked him, as did her friend for keeping them safe. Then she introduced herself, and reminded him that they had been in the same class in the second year of Solmanati Academy. Thelma Lime apologized for her friend, and admitted that Iris is quite shy with men. From the looks of it, Iris was also from the academy, and anyone who knew Nozomu at all could turn their backs on him in an instant. He decided that he shouldn't reveal his name, even though it would be impolite. In addition to that, Iris A family is one of the prominent founding families that helped build Arkhazam, and her father serves directly under the royal family and is an advisor to the kingdom of Forsina. Then the young man resolutely said that he was a second-year student, and his name was Nozomu Bountus. Iris said that she can believe him, but still, she wants to point out that it's a bit suspicious for a rank 10 disciple to be here alone. So where's the rest of his group? Nozomu calmly replied that he was alone and there was no group, which surprised both girls. Iris and Thelma were the two most qualified A-rank students. These ranks were assigned to adventurers on the Arkmail continent, defeating demonic beasts, completing a specialty, creating new research and innovative inventions, each of which can contribute to a higher rank. If a person belongs to the A ranks, they are something like a first-class wanderer, a knight of the royal guard, or a court magician. They can also be proficient in non-combat positions such as economics or military tactics. The only ones that the school has approved as A-rank students in the second year are the 5 unique students. Even those in the upper echelons of power still think it's dangerous to face demonic beasts. No one wants to cooperate with the likes of Nozomu. No one wants him to join them. Students who are able to stay alive are incredibly rare here. Iris took a deep breath and said that despite all this, he was all alone here in the deepest part of the forest. There must be a reason for this. And Nozomu replied that he came here to train. He knows that he can become stronger no matter how small the changes are. He will gladly accept them. But he still doubts that he will become stronger, but that doesn't mean he should just give up and die. Iris apologized, but still thought it was strange, and Nozomu said that here, after all, they were just students, and they didn't have to go through any formalities. In turn, he asked the girls what the two of them were doing here, since it was unusual for students to be here apart from him, and Iris replied that they had received a request from the guild and were following it. They said they saw a dragon, and the dragon is considered a legendary creature, one of the most powerful on Earth, a species with great power. In ancient times they ruled over all creatures. It was believed that if someone kills a dragon, they are given its power. But most people who live today have never even seen it. We saw the skeleton of a dragon. However, no one took the dragon rumors seriously. However, the girls couldn't let the dragon rumors go unchecked, and if the beast seen here was actually a dragon, despite its low size and intelligence, it might still pose an undeniable threat. An insecure hero has no chance against a dragon, and even she, Iris, is not allowed to fight it. She asked the young man if he didn't need the materials, even though they might not cost a fortune. But the meat and fur could be sold at a reasonable price. Besides, she was the one who owed him a favor, so he could take all of them instead. And Nozomu agreed to take some meat, and Iris said they were going back to town now. The girl once again thanked Nozomu for his help, and he replied that it was not a problem. He would also go and return to the city tomorrow. When the girls were a good distance away, Iris asked Thelma why she was so timid, since she usually got along well with men. Thelma apologized and said that this guy was the one who was talked about, that he cheated on Lisa and liked to play with women, and if she was right, then he was the one she grew up with and naturally fell in love with, but Nozomu just wanted her body and nothing else. Iris also knew about these rumors, but Nozomu didn't seem like the type of person who would do such a terrible thing. She just didn't see it in him. Thelma sighed and said that she was scared anyway, and her friend said that if they still had the chance to meet him, then she could just apologize to him, so she should stop worrying now. At this time, Master Shino met Nozomu and accused him of being late, suggesting that he was dominated by the opposite sex, and the young man asked why the master was so angry, But as a punishment, Shino doubled his training. Iris lay in her bed and thought about how Nozomu's sword speed was incredible, and his sword had such a pure color. Mithril is a metal that has a high affinity for magic. It has the ability to accumulate magic over time, and as an armor material, it is far superior not only in strength, but also in flexibility to others. Her sword was given to her by her father and her swordmaster when she first came here. They made the blade based on her habit of using magic. It seemed to them that it protected her more than any other magic. It was engraved with a name, Silver Wings of the Evening Star. Lunar Eclipse Magic Sword is the most powerful magic attack this sword is capable of. Chi and magic are called the source of the soul. In fact, there are not so many differences in the concept between them if you look at it objectively. The power of these two is completely imprisoned in the caster. Magic usually relies on the mental state of the caster and their formation in unison. Chi tends to use the caster's physical core. They tend to repel each other. This sword was designed to negate the undoing nature of these two. Perhaps this sword has the power to cut even the strongest dragon's scales. But Iris thought that she wouldn't be as good as this youth. She wouldn't risk staying in the forest overnight. Being in the forest territory at night just like that, it seems like suicide. She thought with concern that Nozomu was out there alone, while the demonic beasts were in full bloom, and only those with a death wish were left alone in the forest. Under normal circumstances, there would only be those who didn't know about the danger or the well-trained scouts and undercover detectives who had passed have the necessary training to do so. Iris thought deeply and asked herself, is this person Nozomu Bountis? What is he really like? In the afternoon of the next day, the sun was bright in the sky, and there was idle chatter all around. People just talked and walked around, enjoying the beautiful weather. Nozomu knew that he was despised in the entire academy, and there were too many people here, which made it uncomfortable for him to be around so many other students. He didn't want to eat in this park at all, but the school cafeteria was even worse. He was also struggling with money, which meant that he had to be content with what he was hunting for. Training this morning was also doubled, and so when he returned to the dorm, he didn't have the energy left to make himself a proper meal. Nozomu sat under a tree, eating whatever he needed, and thought about what could have been worse. He noticed a girl who was obviously a student of the Eklos Auxiliary School, which is directly connected to Solomonadi Academy, forming on the younger students of 10 years. The goal of this school was to find children who can show signs of giftedness at an early age, and they used the school to develop their abilities at an early age. Nozomu noticed that this girl was a little small for a child belonging to Eklos. Nozomu approached her and asked if she was okay. He thought he saw someone who looked exactly the same, and he asked if it was true that she belonged to Eklos and what was she doing here. The girl explained that she was actually studying at Eklos and was playing with Shadow during her lunch break, but for some unknown reason, her cat climbed a tree and stole her bracelet. The tree Shadow had climbed was very tall and smooth, and even for Nozomu, it wasn't easy to climb. But in the forest, it was important to be able to run away from monsters by climbing the toughest trees. Fortunately, this was his specialty. Nozomu easily climbed the tree and engaged in a fight with the cat, which he asked to calm down and give back the bracelet that he had stolen. The cat was very aggressive and resisted, so that Nozomu lost his bread, which he snacked on during lunch. The young man realized that his lunch was ruined and told the cat to give the bracelet immediately. The girl from below asked if everything was in order there. In the end, the branch on which the man and the animal were fighting broke off, and they both fell to the ground, after which Nozomu asked the girl if the bracelet was intact. The girl happily reported that the bracelet was intact and thanked him for his help, to which Nozomu replied that it was not so difficult. After that, the girl introduced herself and said that her name was Samiliana. In turn, Nozan Bountis introduced himself. Samiliana was pleased to meet him, and Nozomu thought that for the first time in a long time, someone had somehow thanked him. At this time, the bell that called the students to start classes rang, and Samiliana exclaimed that she had to get back immediately. Nozomu thought with annoyance that he had just missed out on his own lunch, but in the end, it was fine. Ritual magic is one of the oldest forms of magic, so if you listen carefully and follow the instructions, you will not have any problems. However, if a person does not have magical abilities, it will be very difficult. The magic teacher explained the design of the magic altar and then asked the students to create each their own altar. After they create it, they need to follow the verbal spells to realize the magic power in the center. Once they finish releasing their magic into the circle, it will create a spell, and spells will usually be like this: as strong as the caster's natural magic ability. The magic will be based on their desire, and therefore, whether it is a bright light or a stream of water, it must respond accordingly, and the accuracy of magic is also related to the caster's technique. Mars was lucky enough to be proficient in both ki and magic at relatively high levels, and Nozomu couldn't imagine the feeling of using magic. As a rule, a person's abilities are focused only on ki or magic. Rarely it fluctuates evenly. As in the case of Mars, very few are exceptional in both. The chances here are less than 1 in 100. However, being able to use both of them at the same time is even less likely. It's amazing how this guy can do that. Because of his overwhelming abilities, Nozomu didn't participate in magic lectures as he couldn't develop any magic skills. Nozomu didn't attend magic classes. Now he was trying to catch up. However, he comes to class only to maintain the view, so he doesn't get anything else in his track record. The academy focuses on students with talented abilities, so they are given more benefits, and the better the abilities, the more privileges they get. Higher ranks get world opportunity differences. Even adventurers will supply high-ranking students with more substantial supplies when they return from a quest. Nozomu wondered who the girl next to Iris was. It was Lisa. Usually, there is a big gap between different level classes and where they train. Nozomu was a sophomore of the 10th rank and hoped to never run into her. It had been more than a year since he'd last seen her, when they'd promised each other a future together. Nozomu, watching Lisa's movements, admired her speed and the way she counterattacked with her fast-casting phantom bullets. Iris held on calmly as she resisted Lisa's monstrous momentum, using her own natural ability to dodge her deadly and precise attacks. But Lisa had the upper hand completely in this duel. She was very confident with her sword, and it was unlikely that Iris would have a chance with this speed. Nozomu wondered how she could attack like this using skills without casting. How can she fight with her sword and cast at the same time? Her sword must be enchanted, and she uses Qui to attack the opponent's legs, and all the time she was hit by a black mist. Then Lisa managed to repel the attack and fiercely used her sword, using magic as a distraction, and it was definitely a duel between two students of the highest rank. They attacked each other without taking a step back, and Lisa's attacks caused strong winds around the arena, and she created images behind her as she attacked. It was a real ruthless duel. The magic was amazing. After that, the duel was stopped because it's not something that even the most powerful mages can use. It was almost as powerful as Thelma's whirlwind wind. It was incredibly powerful, and Nozomu thought, how can it be so strong? Lisa asked Iris why she had been preparing for this attack for so long. The girl replied that from the very beginning of their battle, her attacks were relentless, and it took her longer to prepare for them. She had to focus on the battle. Otherwise, Lisa might have defeated her. Lisa Hounds took that as a compliment. Iris thought that this girl was Nozomu's former lover, and that she was now dating his best friend Ken Notice. She couldn't say that she knew them personally, and only fools would judge people they didn't know at all. But if only she had made this attack earlier, the battle would have gone much better. It usually took her about 10 seconds to summon this attack, and it took Nozomu less than a second. Iris couldn't figure out how he was doing it. Iris saw Nozomu as he was heading to the training ground, but he just ignored her. Usually, Iris watched her classmates' sparring sessions from the sidelines, and it gave her pleasure. It became a habit of hers, and she realized that if she could learn something from watching others fight, she could use it in her own training. Iris saw Thelma and turned to ask her something. She wanted to know about Nozomu's abilities. Meanwhile, Nozomu pondered with a heavy heart and asked himself why Lisa had left him for Ken, why he was forcing himself to go through this pain like it was some stupid game, why he couldn't get stronger, and why he couldn't just stop these thoughts that were always running through his head. Nozomu couldn't find a single reason why he deserved this. These chains bound him and kept him from moving on. He came here even after a long fight with his father, when he told him never to come home again, and his decision was rewarded with this dual reality, where the pain in his heart eliminated itself and left him alone. Locked herself in from the inside out. He would never have thought that such thoughts would ever appear in his mind. But now, despite all his efforts and constant hard training, there is no improvement. He tried so hard and even tried to ask Lisa when everything went wrong, but she only looked at him with disgust, and since then he torments himself with this constant barrage of questions that he never answered. It won't find the answer. Nozomu was counting on his master to help him improve, and over the past couple of years, he had developed a dangerous habit of forcing himself to train harder and harder as a defensive reaction to his imperfection. It's the only defense left in his broken heart, and he knew it wasn't right. But only strict discipline can help him control those emotions. Nozomu met Samiliana, who was happy to meet her, and said that her cat had run away again during her afternoon practice. He must have noticed that the window was open and left. Her cat is a real naughty boy, and Nozomu, after making sure that the girl is all right, wanted to leave. But the girl stopped him and asked if they would see him tomorrow. She would like to thank him for his help, and besides, it would be nice to talk to him a little longer. It was the first time in a long time that someone had suggested that Nozomu meet up without intending to offend him. But if she interacted with him, she might start to be treated the same as him, and he really needed to go back and practice after class with the master. Nozomu replied that he couldn't do it after school, but he was ready to meet her for lunch. Somiliana was very happy with these words, and Nozomu was surprised by the extraordinary energy of this girl. Somiya was practicing her spells at home in the evening. She was flipping through a book, explaining why she wasn't as good as her sister, what was wrong with her, but just then her sister came into the room and said that she was doing just fine. At the moment, they know 6 elements. The most common are earth, wind, fire, and water. The other 2 are rare, but they are known as light and dark. A person's use of any element is determined by its connection with this element itself, but a lower-level spell can be learned without compatibility. The more complex the spell, the more important her compatibility with the element is. She has problems with the light spell, because it is quite complex magic. After that, the older sister showed Somiya a glow-based spell known as Lantern. To the delighted Somiya, the sister said that she should try to focus on the speed of casting the spell, because light magic requires a lot of energy, but when she releases the magic and casts the spell correctly, the radiance will slowly decrease, and once she finds the desired size of the radiance, she must keep the energy flowing so that it does not disappear and, although Iris specializes in the dark element, and she can easily apply all the other elements as well. Then the nurse asked Somiya what good things had happened to her, because she had noticed lately that she seemed happier than before, and the girl replied that she had recently made a friend. He seems very sad, as if he is constantly tormented by something, but in fact he is very kind. And a couple of days ago, the cat stole her bracelet and hid in a tree where she could not get it. And this guy climbed up the tree and returned the bracelet to her. It seems that he avoids communicating with people and is disturbed by their conversations. He seems very sensitive. But she knows for sure that he is very kind, otherwise he would not have helped her when she was in trouble. After that, Somiya asked how her sister was doing, and the girl replied that she also recently met a couple of interesting people. Individuals, however, stand alone. Her sister remembered Nozomu's sad face and replied that she was honestly not sure who he was, because he never talked for long, and it was strange that she was also interested in a person who didn't talk to her. Iris decided to tell them everything and stated that during the investigation, they were suddenly attacked, and this man appeared out of nowhere, and it took him half a second to cut down the monsters, and in the end his movements were so honed that he would have put all the swordsmen she knew in the belt, she knows what, between magic and magic. Chi has a huge difference in ability, but it will never be able to move like this guy. Solimia was surprised to say that she didn't believe there was anyone better than her sister, but Iris reminded the girl that it was late and she should be in bed by now. She needed to rest so that she could grow up as big and strong as her. Besides, she can't talk about the man because she doesn't know him well, and suggested that her younger sister find out more about their new friends and then tell each other. Iris looked at her sister, who had obediently gone to bed, and thought that she was still the same little girl who was born prematurely, and her mother died during childbirth. After her death, Iris raised Somiya alone, fought for her life day after day, and made the decision to protect her little sister from all harm and become the head of the Franchild family. Even when she was only 6 years old, she already knew that this was her vocation. She had worked hard to master the art of swordsmanship, overcoming obstacles in her path to meet the expectations of her family. Nothing could stop her from fulfilling her noble duties as the head of the family. She had never desired love like other women. All she wanted was the ability to wield a sword and use magic. And now she was the only one who became the best in the class. She'd worked so hard for this position, and it had cost her a lot to get to where she was now, but she was proud of it, and she wanted to know why people would think of this guy as a scumbag who'd betrayed the love of his life, even though everything indicated that he was fiercely supportive of her. It just seemed like a mistake. Then the drama from the book, and it seems that those who claim that Nozomu is a womanizer are not telling you something. How two people who were inseparable suddenly became so sharply estranged from each other, and the fact that they always push him away, and the cold attitude of everyone around him indicates that they quarreled. This experience, which he went through, gave rise to a constant desire to change in him. You need to see glimpses of his efforts. They are all written on his body. I wonder what kind of training he puts himself through, that he can create such attacks. And the next day, Somiya met Nozomu on the front lawn. He found out that her sister was also a student at the academy, and informed Somiya that he was also a second-year student and had a lower rank. Somiya smiled and said that they were similar then. She wasn't like her sister, who was doing well in everything, and she was just trying. And the girl's eyes shone with joy. She confessed to Nozomu that at this time, she accepts herself for who she is. Nozomu told the girl that he was also interested in her bracelet. It looks very expensive. And Somiya replied that it is a jewel passed down in her family from generation to generation. It is a reminder that one day the whole family will come together. They wear it to feel connected. even when they are far from each other. Initially, the bracelet was locked in one of the warehouses, but last year her sister gave it to her for her birthday. It reminds her that no matter what happens to them, they will always be together, so it's so expensive, and it's probably good when there are such family details, so Nozomu asked when Somiya's day is birthdays. The girl replied that it was actually coming soon. Her dad was out of town right now, so he wouldn't be able to join them. But her sister still wanted to have a party, and she was thrilled about it. Nozomu offered Somiya lunch, but she confessed that she was having lunch with her sister today, just as Iris, who was looking for her younger sister, came up to them. Iris was surprised that the new friend her little sister had mentioned would be Nozomu, just as Somiya was equally surprised. And the same fate befell the young man himself. The sister's last name was Franchild. Nozomu should have realized that the girl's bracelet wasn't something that an ordinary person could easily possess. She also mentioned that her sister was the same age as him, and they had the same black hair. Why didn't he link it all up, since he also dated Somiya once for a while? And in the meantime, Iris suggested that Nozomu join them for lunch. Nozomu thought about how Iris had everything: a beautiful face and the coolness of a goddess. She was incredibly reliable and helped those in need. The students practically idolized her. She received countless dinner invitations compared to a useless, good-for-nothing loser like him, and he didn't understand the reason why she could have asked him to have lunch together. If they had been in a more public place, the news would have spread all over the school in a matter of minutes, and Similiana repeated the request for lunch together. Iris said that Nozomu didn't seem to like public places. The young man apologized and said that there were just too many people here, so Iris offered to eat right here. Somiya also did not mind, because as long as Nozomu is with them, she is happy anywhere. As the three of them sat down to dinner, Iris asked them not to call her lady and to remove the formalities of addressing her. Nozomu asked Iris if she would like her friend Thelma to join them, and the girl replied that Professor Jihad called her to his office and she told her to go ahead and have lunch without her. Nozomu recalled that Sormanati Academy Director Jihad Roundel was on the front line in the war against the demons, which took place 20 years ago, and he is considered one of the strongest swordsmen in the world. It happened in the northeastern part of the continent and subsequently turned into a disaster, later called the Great Invasion. Hundreds of thousands were killed, and it led to an influx of refugees seeking refuge in neighboring countries. For the first time in history, all countries united and cooperated with each other. They all sent large armies to destroy the demon horde. In the end, they managed to resist their huge numbers, but this caused serious consequences for the surrounding lands. Some countries were wiped off the face of the earth, and when the immediate threat disappeared, many countries suffered civil unrest, with entire countries falling. A flood of refugees filled the ruined streets of the recovering countries. At that point, people wondered if the world could ever recover from such a state. Countries across the continent suffered astronomical damage. It was decided that the best course of action would be to create a place where the refugees could live and prepare fresh blood for the next upcoming invasion. They built an academy and named it Suminachi. Each country perfected their research, creating different types of martial styles and other types of technologies. And Arkazan was built as a place for people to join together and do research. Iris asked Nozoma not to worry about Thelma, and Nozoma saw an animal nearby. Somiya told Nozom that her sister likes dogs, but she likes cats better. My sister objected and said that dogs are definitely nicer, especially puppies. There is nothing on earth that can compare with them. So Tamiya stood her ground and said that cats are still the best for her. And Iris remembered how dogs wag their tails and follow their owner everywhere. It's so charming that it makes you want to hug the animal. So Mia asked her sister how she could say that dogs are cuter than cats. When she petted her cat, it purred and made the cutest sounds she had ever heard. Iris suggested that her sister stop arguing and continue this discussion tomorrow. It would be their 357th cat versus dog meeting, and they wouldn't know who the winner was again. So Somaya asked her sister how they met Nozomu. Iris replied that he was capable of chopping down a demonic bear in less than a second. And Somiya realized that her sister's story that evening was about Nozomu. Iris added that Thelma was almost attacked, but was saved thanks to Nozom, to which Nozom remarked that he was actually the lowest-ranked student in the school due to his overwhelming abilities. But Iris asked in surprise how he could be the worst in the class with such skillful attacks. He replied that this attack was too strong to be used in the academy. He was told that he could even kill someone, but he was only able to achieve this because he trained his body to the limit, and even so, his magic is too low, he can only attack once. Besides, due to the lack of sufficient skills in handling AI, many things are not available to him. Iris asked if he said that when using any enchantments he can only attack with 1 or 2 Keyblades, so why shouldn't he join the group? To which Nozomu replied that no one wants to join him because of his suppressed abilities. Iris stated that he needed to be strong to be in the group. that he was familiar with the spasm forest, and that this knowledge alone would raise his priority on the list. Because after he left them, he went deeper into the forest alone. This definitely means that Nozomu spent the night in the forest, and the Savior Forest is an incredibly dangerous place filled with demons. In every way, the forest is not a place for someone inexperienced and unskilled. Iris didn't know that in fact, Nozomu stayed at Shino's place for the night. It's one of the safest places to stay in the forest, after all. It's a place where a dragon-class adventurer lives, however. But he spent countless nights in the forest alone when Shino kicked him out into the forest for the night. Iris persistently asked the young man why he did not join the group, and suggested that it was because of his breakup with Lisa, or because of the hostile attitude of other students towards him. Iris also stated that she doesn't know the truth about that fight, and she's not the type to speculate about something if she's not sure. After that, Nozomu excused himself and left after saying goodbye. So Mia turned to her older sister and asked if she knew that the academy students disliked Nozomu. It seems that due to his lack of success, he was treated like useless trash in school. The girl replied that this was not all, she just wanted to personally ask the young man about the rumors. She was always surrounded only by people who respected the path she was following. The idea that Nozomu had become an outcast and was being pushed around was impossible for her to understand. There was clearly a distrust of all this and a deep-seated sense of insecurity in his heart. This is what she can see in those whose hearts have been broken and torn apart. All she wanted to do was get to know Nozomu better, because he had saved her friend with an attack she had never seen before. All she wanted to tell him was that she didn't believe such rumors. But this was the first time her words had been rejected by someone, and it was more than she could have expected. She really hadn't thought properly about his situation, and was clearly not prepared for such a result. It would be better to apologize to Nozomu after all. Obviously she had said too much. Nozomu, meanwhile, was thinking about how he's already used to running away from reality, and part of him wants to go back and find out what Iris had to say, but he needs to distract his thoughts with training to get rid of the pain. Because Lisa wasn't the only one who left Nozomu when the rumors started. Most of his friends had left him without a second thought. And they were all the same. Nozomu stopped because he met a girl he didn't expect to meet here. The girl said that they had not seen Nozomu for a long time. It was Camila Wusnoskodet, Lisa's first friend since arriving at the academy, who immediately warned the young man not to speak to her as if she were close to him, and asked if he still attended the school. She was also a friend of Nozomu's in her first year, but she was the quickest and harshest to reject him when the rumors started spreading. Nozomu tried countless times to prove his innocence, but each attempt was in vain. Everyone around him rejected his requests, and his heart gradually began to turn cold. All he wanted to do was clear up this misunderstanding, but they didn't allow him to speak and justify himself, so he gave up. He began to hide the pain inside himself and dive deeper into your own abyss. He started to give up on the idea that he could do things properly at all and focus on the work of restoring his own state of mind, but he managed to accidentally make the situation worse. His mind was overwhelmed by the pain that disturbed the balance of his emotions. They were constantly swinging back and forth like a swing. But he still wanted to talk. But Camila told him not to come any closer, because she couldn't even look at him. He should just disappear and never come back. Then, seeing that the young man did not leave, she said that then she would just go somewhere else. Camila still turned to Nozomu and called him an idiot, because he didn't understand how upset Lisa was right now. The girl left, leaving Nozomu sitting on the ground in despair. Then he got up and ran into the woods, not picking up anything in his path. He had often had suicidal thoughts before. Then he met Iris, and then he ran into Lisa. All these feelings that he pushed away penetrated his heart. Nozomu had gone far into the forest, and it wasn't good. There are a lot of demonic beasts in the forest, and this was the first time his compass had a problem showing the wrong direction. Nozomu decided that it was probably because of the weather. This place was hardly safe, but it was better for him to wait here. He should build a shelter and wait for the fog to leave, wait in the trees, and come to his senses at the same time. Nozomu saw movement in the fog in front of him and thought, "What the hell is that?" Nozomu couldn't understand what was going on here, and no matter how you looked at it, it didn't look like it was happening in the Alakazam. It was a creature with an overwhelming aura and absolute might. A creature that was supposed to remain only in history and legends. It was a legendary representative of dragons. Nozomu's first thought was to run away immediately. He had a weapon that he usually used to escape from monsters in the forest. It was the light that Nozomu had used to get here. The dragon is able to destroy a person with one blow. The young man noticed that all sounds for him were gone. The mountain that the dragon landed on turned into a huge crater, the size of Salmonati Academy, It was spiritual magic, spirit magic. This is different from magic that doesn't use spirits. It needs to be processed somewhere else, so it can be activated as soon as the spirit decides to use this magic. Compared to other types of magic, spiritual magic is dramatically faster. The dragon's figure took up almost the entire horizon, and Nozomu tensed. Suddenly, Nozomu thought that he really wanted to support Lisa's dream, and he kept thinking that way. He also thought of his master, who was quite rude, but she was undoubtedly a good person. And he also thought of all the people who took care of him. Nozomu thought of the Nornaltina, who had tried to convince him that she wouldn't judge a person based on hearsay, but that, as always, there was nothing he could do in serious situations. At this time, he heard the voice of Shino, who asked him what he was doing here. She lost sight of him in this fog, and so went to look for him. It seems that now he is in an extremely difficult situation. She always defeated magical creatures that were too strong for him. But 5 wings of different colors, a black body like coal, unmistakably. This is the legendary Dragon King, and what a misfortune that it was at this age that she met a monster with such a legendary status. His name is Tiamat, and about 5,000 years ago, he began to eat his own kind, eventually being sealed by them. It even ate its own kind. It was feared as a heresy among heresies. It is a legendary dragon that disappeared from the face of the earth 5,000 years ago when it was sealed, and to encounter such a divine being, one must be truly uniquely unlucky. Shino noticed that his internal organs were damaged and, turning to her disciple, she said that Nozomu should escape while she distracted this monster. To Nozomu's protests, the master said that if it was just the two of them, no one would be able to escape, and therefore he should run away from here and not turn around, after which Shino used the Phantom Blade skill. However, this magic did not harm the dragon in any way. With a single strike, she managed to cut through 5 rays of light, and with this key she destroyed an additional 10 rays of light. Then, she smashed the attack of 20 rays of light, but the waves of light continued to advance, and there was no end to the dragon's attacks. Shino didn't have any hands left, so she started using the scabbard of her sword, and as time passed, the power of the light rays began to increase. She was able to cut through light rays that were no more than 5, 4, 3, 2. The number of light rays that she could stop with a single strike began to decrease. She realized that she would not be able to restrain this monster. Her kit began to fail, causing her effectiveness to plummet. In the past, she would never have been able to handle it, and her arm muscles were already starting to ache. She was starting to lose control of her body. Even if she was in a better state, she couldn't imagine it. She is just a useless wench who is even worse than her lousy disciple. Extreme exhaustion and loss of 5 senses began to attack her. Her hands and skin became numb as if they were under amnesia. Even the smell of burning light rays disappeared, and the sound of light rays exploding began to disappear. Shino noticed that even her vision was starting to get worse. She must be dying. She thought of her disciple, and it seemed to her that she was having fun with him. And if she managed to save him, then it's not so bad. At this time, she saw Nozomu coming towards her, and the master shouted for him to get out of here quickly. The key that Shino aimed at the ground came out from under the enemy, lifting them into the air to be destroyed by the power of ki. Among all the abilities that Shino possessed, this is the strongest with the longest range attack. This is a special type of ki skill. However, due to the sudden exhaustion of her kin, her power was lost. Suddenly, Nozomu's body temperature started to drop. He felt the approach of death. It was many times more painful than all the previous times when he was attacked. Because of the loss of blood, his brain activity began to be disrupted. He didn't even have the strength to remember. He realized a cruel reality and thought that now he was going to die. The rejection of death awakened his strength. The coldness began to recede from his heart. He did not want to die and give up. If someone refuses to resist and the desire to escape the cruel reality, the only thing that wakes up at this moment is a desperate desire to live, burn the remnants of life, and turn on the light so that it does not go out. The desire to live was kindled in him. Nozomu's concentration skyrocketed and improved his sense of time, and he just wondered why he was so slow after all. It is as if his body is bound by metal chains, and it does not allow him to move forward. These invisible chains emit barely noticeable light, and they are all to blame. Nozomu couldn't break them. The appearance of these shining metal chains out of nowhere must be a product of his imagination, but he was aware of the existence of the chains, and he was confident that he could break free of them. Due to the incredible acceleration developed by the monster, the dragon lost something. The dragon lost sight of Nozomu for only a split second, and the phantom blade and ki clenched thinner and sharper than a single hair, were ready. The ki was released at the same speed as the sword swing. However, this attack failed to damage even the cornea of the monster's eye. And this meant that it also has the animal side. Even though the dragon is a spiritual being, it still has a physical body. For example, if you attack one of the senses, it will try to protect it. This defense mechanism is similar to what humans have. Tiamat hit the ground with such force that it caused a strong earthquake. However, up to this point, Nozomu was unable to move freely due to the intense fluctuations of the ground. But the ground beneath him collapsed, and he managed to protect himself from the impact. As a result of landing, the dragon fell into a cave that existed from below. Tiamat was a spirit king capable of using exceptional magic comparable to spiritual magic, and before Nozomu could take 3 steps and launch an attack, the dragon started using the skill in hopes of getting rid of him. Nozomu, who had managed to free himself from his overwhelming ability, rushed forward at high speed. Shino's light destroyer helped Nozomu's dash by deflecting some of the light around him while deflecting the light rays. And this paved the way for Nozomu and Tiamat to move at a speed that Shino had never reached. Even dragon breath is considered spiritual magic, so it can be activated without the need to create a magic circle or cast a spell. The dragon became irritated by the insignificant resistance of the humans. Tiamat lost his mind. He wanted to destroy the world he was trapped in. Tiamat began to accumulate all of his power in the wings of 5 colors. Shino and Nozomu observed an extraordinary phenomenon. The entire area turned into solid circles of light magic. The fog cleared, and visibility became excellent. This world was created to seal Tiamat. Every time the dragon went astray and Shino realized that the world itself was trying to resist his power, this was a chance. Tiamat, weakened by the effect of the seal, became like an S-rank adventurer, and Shinano shouted for her disciple to leave. However, Nozomu used his phantom blade to cut through the scales under the dragon's throat, and the ki gathered and embedded in the blade exploded inside Tiamat's throat. He swung his sword as if a path had been laid out in front of him. Nozomu hit the monster's damaged skin. Using the momentum provided by the first blow, he swung next to him once more. The dragon's flesh gave under the young man's blade. Even with all the injuries he had already received, the great dragon was still not defeated, and with an earth-shaking cry, he helplessly tried to shake off Nozomu. With all his remaining strength, the young man grabbed his sword, which was tightly stuck in the dragon's body, and concentrated ki wind in his right hand, striking a slashing blow. This was the end. The ki shatter light skill, streams comparable to a high-level magic skill, shot into the sword. Nozomu's attack eventually took the dragon's head off, along with the lump of nerves inside. The dragon was finished, and Nozomu, exhausted, lay on his back and stared up at the sky with a detached expression. Shino called out to him, calling him a stupid student. A magnificent radiance could be seen in the sky, which was painful to look at. Nozomu was freed from the chains that held back his development. The broken pieces of those metal chains reflected a pale light in the dying dragon's eyes. Nozomu approached this amazing creature and carefully looked at its remains. What did his deterrent skill have to do with this great and terrifying dragon? Nozomu opened his eyes and couldn't tell if he was dreaming or if he was actually seeing the face of his teacher, who was glad that he was awake. Shino confessed to the young man that she had been tending to his wounds for 3 whole days. And instead of thanking him, he called her a monster and thought, Nosramu, it only seems like 10 minutes have passed. In fact, 3 days have passed since the fight with Tiamat. He looked around and realized that there was no furniture, except for the basic necessities of daily life. The room he was recovering in belonged to Shino. Nozomu smelled a peculiar smell from the medicine that the teacher used to treat him, and he apologized to Shino, who said that after all this, there was no need for the worry that he had put her through. He finally expressed some gratitude. Nozomu asked the teacher sympathetically if she was hurt. Master replied that she was fine, but she had taken too much ki. But he didn't have to worry about it, and as for him, she had been carefully monitoring him and treating his wounds for the past 3 days. But there was something she had to tell him about his current condition. First, the sealed world was a world created by dragons to seal the Dragon King of Destruction. Although Tiamat himself was considered nothing more than a legend, the story of the sealed world was even more dubious. He defeated Tiamat in the sealed world, but only a dragon can know the answer to what is happening there. But humans are not spirits, and this is not something they can easily understand. Shino looked directly into the eyes of her disciple and informed him that he had defeated Tiamat and taken his powers for himself, and now he was the so-called Dragon Slayer. A dragon slayer the likes of which had not appeared in the last few hundred years. The inheritors of a powerful force, the embodiment of incredible power, were those who used spells that existing magic cannot explain. and those who were able to awaken superhuman abilities. They are creatures that appear only in fairy tales. It is clearly recorded in history that their last appearance was 300 years ago. When the Chromosome Empire was founded, it was believed that they no longer exist. Nozomu found it hard to believe that he was now a dragon slayer, and Shino suggested that he check something out by pointing at his sword, which was previously hers. The master suddenly lunged at him, brandishing her weapon, and Nozomu barely parried the blow. Shino sheathed her sword. She thought that after becoming a dragon slayer, his physical abilities had increased, and she knew that Nozomu had a talent for using curved blades. But due to the suppression of his abilities, the lack of strength and limited ki greatly affected his instantaneous movement. Before they had the ability to use curved blades, there was no choice but to mask it with footwork and breathing techniques. But the dragon slayers would inherit their power, making them even more powerful. That's probably what happened to him, though she doesn't think he's much stronger now. The master sighed and added that the ability suppression effect was so great for him that his increased abilities were now completely suppressed. When he fought Tiamat, he was able to break free from the suppression of abilities, break free from these chains that bound him. Can he still do it? Nozomu hesitantly said that he had never heard of anyone being able to release their abilities from the suppression. The youth didn't know what he would do now. Shino said that the power he gained is incredibly powerful and usually attracts different things: status, fame, authority, envy, and even cannibals. If it starts once, it will never end, so she asks him one more time, what does he want to do from now on? She had already thought about it for a while, and he didn't have to become stronger than he was now. But even if it's about supporting his beloved, even if he wants to support her, this girl doesn't feel what he feels. And he doesn't use the techniques that he was taught in the academy. The techniques she taught him would be much more effective if he used the ghost blade on a wooden dummy. The wave of force would spread out over a huge distance, and if it were a human being, it's even scary to imagine what would happen. The possession of it will keep him from falling to the bottom. Besides, swordsmanship, which is very difficult as she trained him, an extremely rare thing on this continent. The only thing he should be wary of is the fear of facing reality and the desire to give up. Nozomu tried to avoid the truth because he was rejected by the person closest to him, and he was alone, and no one could influence his desire to become stronger. Everything led to the fact that he withdrew into himself and ran away, never understanding the essence of the whole situation. If the girl he likes says that she wants her dreams to come true, he will support her, no matter what it takes. He clashed at the academy for Lisa's sake, did nothing but practice with the sword, and did not make any attempts to face the person who is the most dangerous person in the world. It is at the center of its problems. He can't see the present, he's still trapped in his past. And even if Master tells him to decide what to do in the future, she's sure Nozomu can't decide it alone. Shino asked her disciple to focus on recovering from his injuries for now. After all, he would have to make a choice. Besides, she wasn't sure if he would be able to return to the city with such injuries. He should continue to rest in the hut. Nozomu agreed with his mentor's words, and Shino hugged the young man and congratulated him on his return. The teacher praised him and said that he did a good job. And Nozomu noticed with sadness that Shino had dark circles under her eyes and was breathing heavily. Nozomu thought ruefully that it was probably because Shino had been courting him for so long. She thought about the fact that this child had become a dragon slayer in spite of everything. She was sure that his body and mind needed rest, and it was hard to imagine how stressed his mind was, just as it was hard to imagine how exhausted this person was. Shino was not born on a continent, but in an island country in the Far East. She was the second daughter of the head of the family, who owns a particularly famous style of swordsmanship, Mikagura, and from an early age was absorbed in practice, after which her talent blossomed in the blink of an eye. Although there were some who made fun of her for being a swordsman, despite being a woman, Shino's father taught her everything the way she wanted. Her mother also approved of the girl's ambition. Her older sister was especially loving towards her and was always on her side. All her battles ended in victory, and her glorious military service received high marks from everyone, and she even personally received a commendation as a reward from the most respected person in the village. And that was when Shinua's sister, whom she loved and respected, introduced her to a young man who was supposed to be her disciple. After meeting Shinua, she was able to experience love, which quickly blossomed. They got engaged, and the girl was at the peak of happiness. However, when she was supposed to get engaged to the groom, an unfounded accusation of adultery turned the wedding ceremony into chaos and the marriage was cancelled. Shino proved to everyone that the accusations were false, but no one listened to her, and only after a year did she find out the true identity of the criminal who framed her. It was her sister. Her older sister told her in anger that when she heard the news that she wanted to get married to this guy, She decided never to let it happen and take everything from her. Her status, honor, she would now lose everything that she had. She will never be happy in this life again. There is no place for her in this family anymore, and no one will save her, no one will protect her. Her sister had planned to marry the young man herself, and 3 days later, Shino left the Mikaguro family without saying a word to anyone. She left her home, her country, everything that was left behind on this island, and eventually made her way to the Spasm Forest. A strange land, untouched by the hand of man, she moved to where she lived, without communicating with anyone. Shinolako thought that she and Nozomu were strikingly similar. He was also abandoned in the same way. At first she hated how much he resembled her former self, but now it was different. Shino knew that her Kia couldn't recover. Instead it shrank and disappeared. She understood that it was a death dream. Those who suffer from this disease slowly lose their Ki until they die. They say that the reason is that the limit of Ki depletion is exceeded, causing serious damage to the heart that supports their life force. In this world, things really don't go as they would like. There are only a few cases where people recover from the disease. But the cure hasn't been found yet. There are still many things she would like to tell Nozomu. She only taught him sword techniques during the time they were together. But she doesn't have time to do anything at all. She told the young man one last time that as long as she is here, she will do her best to finish what she started. The end. A week later, Nozomu was standing in front of the entrance to the city. He turned to Shimano and thanked her for seeing him off, and the girl replied that she was still his master and naturally needed to help her disciple. During her training with master, the medicine from Shino's bag didn't help immediately like the potions from the shops, but instead, it increased the natural regeneration of the body without going beyond the limits of reason. But before master behaved differently. Usually when she was upset, she used martial arts along with a stream of insults to educate, but now it was as if she was trying to show her concern. And now she even walked him back to town. Nozomu asked his mentor if she had never been to Arkazami before, and Shino replied that she didn't have a special desire, and in turn asked the young man if he wouldn't have any problems due to the fact that he was absent from classes for a whole week. But Nozomu suggested that she show him around the city. Shino agreed. And as she traveled through the streets of the city, she marveled at the abundance of food and various seeds. When they finally reached the academy, Shino wished to return to the forest, and Nozomu thanked the master for everything. Just at this time, the morning bell rang. Besides, the final exams were approaching, and Shino reminded the young man that he had almost a week of skipping, without a valid reason. Then the teacher asked him to come to her hut after today's classes, because she had a lot to talk to him about. Nozomu asked the girl in surprise. So she had something else to say to him, but Shino replied that they would talk when the time was right, and now he was already late for class. Nozomu hurried to the academy, and Shikolo regretted that her student could no longer accompany her, and decided to take a little more walk around the city. The final exams of the Solmanati Academy consisted of the results of 2 exams, practical and written. If a high-ranking student gets a low grade, then he falls down in rank. If his grade does not meet the minimum requirements, he will be left for the second year, or in the worst case, he will be expelled from the academy. For Nozomu, who usually received low grades, it was a serious problem. Homeroom teacher Nozomu didn't ask much about the reason for his unnecessary absence, so his explanations were vague, and the other students didn't want to attract the teacher's attention, so they were quiet as if it wasn't a big deal, and no one else brought it up afterwards, and that was the end of the morning class. During the lunch break, Nozomu was stopped in front of the staff room by Miss Henri, who suggested that the young man was hiding something from her, because it was not normal to miss a whole week without a good reason. Nozomu replied that he was injured because he went into the forest and was attacked by a monster, and the girl asked what kind of creature it was and where it attacked him, to which the young man replied that it was a mad bear and he did not remember exactly this place in the forest. The girl asked incredulously if he was talking about one of the 3 mad bear brothers. Nozomu said that he was bedridden for a while, but now he's all right, and Andre asked why he didn't try to inform them about his absence, because he lives in a dorm and could easily have contacted the academy. Nozomu explained that his condition was worse than expected, and he couldn't even walk much, and his classmates didn't care about him, he didn't like lying, but he couldn't tell the whole truth. Henri exclaimed that he didn't trust her. Was she really that unreliable? Nozomu hastened to reassure the girl and said that this was not the case, to which Henri said that he deceived her. 3 mad bears were killed by Iris's team about 10 days ago. Besides, he moves as if he is injured, and the medicines used to treat him do not smell at all like those that are sold in the city. Nozomu was surprised that she noticed his altered movements, and that she knew the difference in the smell of medicine. He thought that this woman was so beautiful that he felt that he was ready to tell everything. This girl is one of those who can charm men without even trying. and it seems that she does not know about it. Meanwhile, on the park bench of the academy, Somi asked her sister if she had resolved the misunderstanding with Nozomu. Thelma, who was present, asked Iris what had happened, and the girl replied that they had talked about something with Nozomu a few days ago, and Thelma assumed that was why she hadn't seen her on her lunch breaks lately. Iris confirmed her friend's guess and admitted that she thought it would be bad to suddenly break into his classroom, so she waited for Nozomu at the main entrance. But she never got to see him. Apparently, he hasn't shown up at school for some time. Thelma had never seen Iris so worried about a guy before. Meanwhile, Somiya asked her sister if she could invite Nozomu to her next birthday party. Because he is her friend, he helped return the bracelet that she gave her, and she always wanted to pay him back somehow. Nozomu somehow looks a little lonely when he smiles, and she wants her friends to be happy. And Iris told her sister that she was right. She wanted her friends to smile, and that was absolutely right. She didn't know about Nozomu's past. She could only imagine how much he was cornered. At first, she was only satisfying her interest, but after seeing how much effort he was putting in, she began to sympathize with him, which was why it was so frustrating that she still hadn't managed to resolve that misunderstanding. Iris firmly stated that she would take care of the conversation and clarify all the details with the young man, and then invite him to Somiya's birthday party. The girl thanked her sister for participating. Teacher's assistant Henri often attends classes and helps students when necessary. However, a class of the 10th rank can have no more than one assistant instructor assigned to them, while the first rank has several. During the midday practice sessions, there were demonstrations, such as the recent ritual magic demonstration, and at the end there were practice fights. Mars disdainfully told Nozomu that he was unlucky enough to be his opponent again. Although regardless of the opponent he still won't be able to win, then there's no need to worry about it, and Nozomu felt that everyone was still feeling uncomfortable, but at least his body was moving as it should, and his injuries were fine. The feeling of the training sword and his personal sword was almost the same. He can release the chains that bind him, but he won't do it right now. He shouldn't release it, because it's an alarm from his dreams and he feels like something inside him is going to break. The kin technique that he learned from the master was not supposed to be used by him in the academy. He was wondering if he could still use it, and at this time, the team was given the command to start the duel. Mars drew his sword and charged at Nozomu. When the two men met in close combat, Mars advised Nozomu to be a good boy and die quickly from his sword, while passing a downward blow from behind his head, masking his main blow. However, Nozomu deftly dodged the enemy's attack, having guessed his maneuver. Mars was unpleasantly surprised that this guy managed to block his best shot. Moreover, Nozomu successfully counterattacked and created a lot of inconvenience for his opponent. Mars angrily advised Nozomu not to get too conceited, because he is still trash. He promised the young man to tear it to pieces and destroy it, after which Mars used the air coating of the sword, a Kia technique in which the sword is wrapped in a wind blade that can tear objects apart. A high-density technique compresses the air, which subsequently creates a strong pressure that hits a weaker opponent, blocking the possibility of a counterattack. In addition, the wind cover increases the speed of cutting attacks, which become much stronger. Mars threw a series of clever punches, but Nozomu managed to dodge them, and Mars continued to repeat his attacks even more often than before, and Nozomu could now calculate his movement 2 or 3 moves ahead. Mars was confused as to why he couldn't hit this guy with his sword. With Mars' ability, known as Wind Spirit Protection for air element only, greatly increasing the power and accuracy of spells and techniques, if Nozomu was the same as before, Mars should have seen his clumsy blocks, dodges, and tackles. Under the effect of the suppression ability, Nozomu wouldn't be able to do anything with a downward slash even if he strengthened himself with ki. Nozomu understood that in his current state, he could fend off attacks without changing his stance. Due to becoming a dragon slayer, his physical abilities had slightly increased. He can also now use the techniques that he learned from the master. Mars couldn't allow himself to be surpassed by anyone of the first rank. With his speed as well as the strength increased by the sword's air cover, he hadn't found a single opportunity to counterattack yet, and the 10th rank could somehow read his attacks 5 steps ahead. This shouldn't have happened. But finally, he could fight this guy the way he wanted. His ability suppression sets a permanent limit for him, especially with these shackles. Just how much more training did he have to do to break through this wall? Mars couldn't accept that. Then he noticed that Nozomu had used wind and the inevitable breakdown skill. Mars used a technique derived from the air covering of the blade ram, lightning step dance. And lightning step is a growing type technique that can instantly move in a straight line, as well as move in the direction of curves. This is a high-level technique that requires excellent legs and a sense of balance to fully utilize the power of a lightning-fast stride, as well as fine muscle control that allows the entire body to move in unison without exerting too much effort. To his surprise, Mars saw that Nozomu easily evaded his phenomenal attack. Mars himself almost fell for his counterattack. At that moment, the gong sounded to announce that the battle was over, and the teacher announced that the final exams were over and that classes were over for today. Verge offered to talk to Nozomu, but the young man excused himself and said that he was very busy and quickly left the arena. Mars, meanwhile, had a strange feeling that Nozomu was a nobody. But why was he so annoyed with this guy who was hiding his real abilities? Finally, he realized that compared to him, he couldn't stand those who secretly made a fuss while being in the shadows. Even if he was weak and couldn't do anything, he struggled and became stronger than anyone else, and he didn't understand it, he never once heard, so that someone with the ability to suppress could surpass the limits placed on them. Mars realized that this guy had definitely gotten stronger, or rather he had been strong all along, but they all just didn't realize it. Meanwhile, Iris, knowing that Rank 10 was currently having a practice session, decided to meet Nozomu at the main gate. She did see him there, but Nozomu was in such a hurry that he didn't even stop to talk to her. Nozomu hurried into the forest and thought that there were a lot of strangers in the city, and he needed to get back as soon as possible. It seemed to him that something was happening. After all, during the battle with Tiamat, the master was there and saw everything with her own eyes. Shino found her drinking alcohol while sitting on the doorstep of the hut, and after greeting the disciple, she said that he should stay with her today, since any man should accept the invitation of a beautiful girl. Nozomu realized that the teacher was obviously weak on alcohol, and Shino ordered him to sit down next to her, holding his hand tightly, which was a skill of someone who was used to controlling the regulation of Q energy. Nozomu noticed to his surprise that the master was indeed a very beautiful girl, even though she was older. But Shino suggested that the student talk for a while. Suddenly, she began to ramble on about how much she loved her homeland and her family, and how much she still loved it, even after such a long time. And she also wanted to know about Nozomu's history. Where is his hometown? What kind of family he has and what he likes? They talked to the teacher about all sorts of things. There were stories that the master already knew about, but she still wanted to hear them from Nozomu's mouth. He told her about his sword training, told her everything he had ever known or taught, but the most important thing for him was the time he spent with Master Shino. And this seemingly ordinary conversation brought Nozomu a lot of joy. Shino, listening to the young man, thought that she had no right to call herself the teacher of such a beautiful student, but she really wanted it. And if she had been born 10 years later, she would have wanted to spend her whole life with this person, so long as this body did not suffer from illness. She was very sorry that this would not happen, but Nozomu would always remain in her heart. Shino mentally wished Nozomu everything he wanted to achieve and told him that they should start their last training session. These words surprised the young man very much, and he asked the master what she meant by the word last. And Shino replied that this is the last training that she will conduct for him, and the essence of the last training is that it will be a duel to the death. Nozomu couldn't understand what the teacher was talking about. He thought it was too cruel of a joke. But Shino wasn't going to explain anything to him. She looked him in the eye and asked him if it made sense to ask the reasons for someone who was serious about killing him. With that, Shino drew her sword and launched an attack on her disciple. She almost killed him with the first blow, and Nozomu was surprised to ask the teacher why she was doing this. He told Shino that she always allowed him to ask questions during training. He understands that all this is for the sake of greater concentration on his part, but what can he think about now? Even if he does something that can kill her, he did not have such thoughts before. Instead of answering, Shino threw a series of precise and continuous punches, and he thought that if she hit him, she would cut him in half, so that no wounds would be left. The master's attacks contained experience, physical abilities, and swordsmanship. Still, the master's sword technique is a complex technique that combines the scabbard of a sword with hand-to-hand combat. A scabbard reinforced with Chijutsu, for example, can easily break human bones. Nozomu could see that the power of each strike from the master gradually decreased, but the density of attacks still increased, and this was the main difference between his abilities and the master's. Nozomu focused all his attention on the two-handed intercept and felt his entire body go numb. He knew that just a little more, and Shimatino would kill him. Nozomu's stomach was on fire, and he knew that his defense was completely ineffective. Then he decided that he would have to attack, and his most reliable technique was the phantom. Suddenly, he saw that his phantom had been redirected by someone. To intercept his phantom technique, the master had to be on the same trajectory that he launched it. She had to block with her sword without deviation or delay. Nozomu realized that he would never win against the master, and Shino advised him to release the energy he was suppressing. This is the only way to defeat her. This is the only opportunity that he has. Nozomu remembered his dream where he was all in chains and thought, is this a view of his soul from the inside? Maybe the body is dead, but the soul still lives inside him? Although the power is bound by the strongest chains, the soul cannot be suppressed even by this. To defeat the master, he has no choice but to attack with all his strength out of control, but if he does, Tiamat can break free with a firm will and hatred in his eyes. Nozomu was confused and seemed to be losing consciousness. He could no longer hear anything, and he had a feeling of his legs and arms, as if he had fallen into cold water. Obviously, this was death. Suddenly, the young man saw that the master was crying, and Nozomu asked Shino why she was doing this, to which the girl replied that she was going to die soon, and she didn't have much time left. Perhaps it was the battle with Tiamat that opened the wound in her heart, and it was likely that she would only live for one more night at most. Nozomu said in desperation that he had tried many times to break the chains of his illness, and Shino remarked that if he had more control over his body, maybe he could do it. And why don't they try it if they still have some time? As sad as it was, she came here out of desperation, after being betrayed by her own family and abandoned by her parents, so she disregarded her surroundings and came to this continent. They are very similar in this. Betrayal, ridiculing others, and running away. She didn't want to see anyone else and was happy to die alone, which is why she came to a place like this. She spent many years in this forest, and then she met Nozomu. At first it seemed to her that he only annoyed her, but then she was able to see his inner world and is very happy about it. She felt something for him that she didn't have, and now she has a last wish that she's been running away from, and he has to accept her last request. Nozomu realized that Shino had already chosen her own path long ago, and to convince the master to live would be to pervert her desire. She had spent the last hours of her life telling him everything. He too had spent his entire life running away from himself, from what surrounded him in the academy, running away from reality itself. But if he ran away from the teacher's desire, he would never meet her again. Nozomu didn't want to see Shino cry bitterly. He recalled the battle with the dragon as if it had been a few minutes ago. His power is now inside Nozomu's own body. Shino interrupted the young man's memories and said that he wasn't the right person for her. He wasn't her opponent. Her opponent is a dragon whose power resides in Nozomu's body. This is the five-colored light. This is the power of Tiamat. Not everyone could cope with the power of the dragon they defeated. He is facing a huge force that is raging inside him. The power permeates his mind and body at the limit. If he copes, this power will consume him. In the worst case, the body will be torn apart, and Tiamat will resurrect, so they have no time. Nozomu knew that he didn't have much of a chance, and Shino was his superior in skill. However, now his strength was not restrained by anything. Becoming a dragon slayer, he gained exorbitant power. The master shouted to Nozomu that you need to be more gentle with the ladies. The young man replied that he does not see a weak girl in front of him who needs to succumb. She needs to remember how old she is and with what force she beat him. And Shino replied that a girl is always a girl. No matter how old she is, he does not understand women's hearts, so he was abandoned as a loser. Nozomu did not want to hear this from the hermit, who ran away to the forest and called her a failure as well. And the mentor promised to teach him respect. Shino used the shock cannon technique where compressed ki is released in one direction to push the opponent back and send Nozomu flying back several meters. But after just a few seconds, Nozomu was floating in the air, swinging his sword. And the master said that he had raised his skill level right in the middle of the battle. And Nozomu exclaimed that she was pretending to be a helpless old lady, and she was using techniques like shattering punch, which can tear the opponent's organs with a shockwave. Shino said that the ritual magic she now uses originates in the rituals of offering prayers to gods and spirits, and prayer also includes dancing, hence the basis of ritual techniques, a fusion of dance and martial arts. Her multiple attacks resemble a dance, and the attacker himself awakens the magical elements surrounding him by using ritual magic, developing a method of ceremonial chanting of 1,000 words for a siege. This is the ritual battle dance reincarnation. It absorbs the power of the surrounding magical elements and gives strength again and again. The more you dance, the stronger you become. Outstanding flow control, synergy of fighting spirit, and perfect dance. Nozomu was able to master one of the most advanced techniques. Techniques and magic that use the caster's physical foundation repel each other. A combination of methods that are complete opposites, and despite his lack of knowledge in the field of magic, Nozomu is now capable of impossible combinations. In less than 2 years he has acquired the most advanced skills, endured hellish training, overcame the absolute power of battles, and on the continent there are with just a few people capable of defeating this boy who had broken his bonds. Such strength would easily break the mind of an ordinary person. Shino felt that her ki was no longer recovering, and Nozomu used a phantom flash. The blade with ki embedded in it hit Shino with lightning speed, and the master fell to the ground, and when the disciple bent over her, she whispered that he had become stronger, and she believed that she could no longer teach him anything. Yes, and she is happy that he accepted her last request, giving her peace. Shino weakly asked Nozomu to remember that he can run or get stuck in place, but he must not turn away from the fact that he is running from reality, and if he forgets about it, he will freeze forever and will not be able to live with it any further. Whatever he chooses, he must move forward. Shino closed her eyes and declared that she was very tired and would probably sleep, after which she said goodbye to her student. Nozomu buried his teacher and, bending over her grave, thanked her for all that she had done for him. After that, he resolutely turned around and headed towards the city. In another empire, in an old castle, the butler approached Mrs. Lugado and said that the deadline for fulfilling the contract concluded by her predecessor was approaching, and the girl asked if the contract was not the same one that her father had signed. The old butler replied that it was a contract with a landlord in the south of the country, and it was time to collect the goods they had given them for their help. The mistress put him in charge and asked him not to delay it, and if they would resist, he should just get rid of them. The lady also reminded him that the Gurnis family would be here soon and they would have to arrange an early reception, and the butler bowed his head in respect and replied that he would be on his way right away. Nozomu somehow made it to the third year, had to take more extra exams than anyone else in the entire history of the academy, ended up at the bottom of the weakest class again, almost failed the practice exam due to injuries and being unable to use his new strength, and in order not to be kicked out of the academy, I had to work hard on my written exams. He decided that it was best to leave things as they were, since the Dragon Slayer's power was too great to deal with so easily. The stones turned to dust from its blows, and this was not something that could be used in the academy. He can release his power for a maximum of 2 minutes. It will not take longer to control it. If he releases it thoughtlessly, the dragon's power will destroy his mind and body in a matter of seconds, so he needs to decide what to do next with Taimot and Lisa. Nozomu found himself still running away from reality, and the students of the academy kept asking each other why this guy still hadn't left school yet. Because of him, they were being put on the same level as him, who was good for nothing and who had retaken the exam 3 times. He still doesn't understand that he doesn't belong here, and Solmanati Academy is a school for the brightest teenagers from all over the continent. The rules here encourage competition and personal growth, and the academy has its own class system. Despite the huge number of advantages, it also has negative consequences. The most capable are at the top, and it is only natural that those who are below, they begin to look down on. Despite their efforts, a person cannot break through to the top and, although at home he was considered a real genius, a student stuck in the lower grades accumulates anger and frustration inside. As a result, those who are no longer able to bear all this vent their inferiority complex, humiliating the guys who are even lower than them. And Nozomu was at the very bottom of this distinctive society. Verge came to the class and told them that Mr. Caskell had been appointed 5th grade homeroom teacher, that she was now in charge of their 10th grade class, that she hoped they would get along with them, and after that she invited the students to take their seats. When the third-year students took their seats, Henri said that they might feel bad for getting into the 1st grade from the end, but they shouldn't dwell on it. She's already worked with the higher classes in her practice, and they have to believe that they are as good as the other kids and that everyone here has a talent, but they just don't know how to use it yet, although some of them of course know a little more about themselves, or at least try to find out. Then the teacher suggested starting a new school year, and started the roll call. Henri enthusiastically said that now they will be preparing for exams, going to practical classes, and attending a lot of different events from the very morning, because the senior year also means a lot of worries. Nozomu knew that this day would come, training in combat techniques, because in the 3rd year, most practical classes are group fights. These were team battles, where the goal was to learn how to work in a group and develop their individual combat skills. When Mars suddenly approached him and suddenly offered to join his group, his classmates were against it. They didn't understand why they would take in a loser, and Nozomu thought that they probably wouldn't accept him, so he didn't even ask to join them. Nozomu agreed to be on his team, and Ankari exclaimed that they were now a team and could start the fight. The battle began. The academy's arena filled with the sounds of swords clashing and the cheers of opponents. One of the contestants used a wind blade, which she released in the direction of their group. They were trying to separate them, so Nozomu rushed to intercept them. In addition, someone launched a fireball, which caused quite a stir. The groupmates weren't afraid that they would hurt Nozomu because they still considered him useless and only relied on him to at least be a decoy. Nozomu thought with annoyance that not only did he need to defend himself from enemy attacks, but the allies were also bombarding him from behind. And then he noticed that the opponents were working in pairs. One was getting a new arrow, and the other was already ready to use a spell. They had all thought of it perfectly, but they asked for it. The opponent's archers couldn't figure out where Nozomu, who had just been under their gun, had gone, and Nozomu attacked them from behind, suddenly appearing from the air. The archers rushed to escape from this guy's surprise attack. Mars came to his aid, swinging his sword so hard that it might have hit Nozomu if he hadn't taken advantage of the instant rush. Their eyes met, but neither of them looked away first. Nozomu wondered why Mars had invited him to join the team, and Mars, in turn, decided that this guy had changed a lot. It turns out that Nozomu is a great fighter, and he was only in the blind spots of opponents, constantly moving to be one-on-one with them. This guy was able to cope with the attacks of all four, both enemies and would-be allies. Besides, in the midst of this chaos, he anticipated his attack and instantly moved to her. He definitely wouldn't have been able to avoid it under the pressure of his abilities. Where did he get such experience? There is no one to study with at the academy, and he himself is not high enough to get a job from the guild. Did he go to the forest all the time? And this is the only place where you can still get practical experience. Mars decided to check this guess. As soon as Nozomu stepped out of the dorm, he immediately sensed that he was being followed, and she didn't disappear even when he reached the center of the city. But she didn't give off any malicious intent. He thought that he would throw his pursuer off his tail if he went into the forest. But he had a bad feeling, considering what a secret he was keeping. Did anyone find out that he was a dragon slayer? If it was so obvious to get rid of the pursuit, there might be problems. Although I didn't want to lead the stranger to the master's hut either, and I'd have to see for myself. Nozomu led the pursuer into a deserted area and turned around. It was a familiar person. He asked Mars why the hell he was following him, and Mars said he just wanted to make sure of something. Mars attacked Nozomu and said that he just wanted to hear the answer to his question, and Nozomu asked him why. Then he pointed his sword at him. Nozomu noticed that Mars' sword was huge, but that didn't stop him from fighting with a series of punches and smooth movements. Mars was surprised to see Nozomu masterfully evading his attacks, no matter how much he varied his attack. Unexpectedly, Mars used the wind fist, a kin technique in which wind accumulates in the attacker's fist to increase the force of the blow. Also, this wind current can be used to blow away the enemy, which is why this technique is very versatile. Mars thought with annoyance that even though he was physically stronger and had more ki, he still couldn't hit Nozomu, who either parried his attacks or dodged them and almost hit him a couple of times. It seemed that he was an order of magnitude better at fencing. Mars wanted to know how he had reached this level of mastery, even under the influence of ability suppression, and if he learned this secret, he would surely become stronger, much stronger than before. Mars put away his sword and apologized for suddenly attacking Nozomu. He asked the youth how did he manage to achieve such mastery of the blade. Nozomu replied that he had a mentor who had taught him since his first year, and Mars asked to meet with this master. Nozomu sadly replied that his teacher was already dead, and Mars then asked how he trained him, to which the young man replied that it was a variety of fights, both with monsters and with teacher Shino. Mars was surprised at how he managed to survive, and expressed his admiration for the incredible skill with the blade and the accuracy of his movements, along with his judgment on the battlefield. It seems that all this was taught to him by a master. Nozomu thought that this painful experience, repeated over and over, branded into his mind and body, had resulted in the ability to do whatever was necessary to survive, whether he wanted to or not. During training fights with the master, where the slightest delay could cost him his life, he had mastered the art of making the quickest and most correct decisions. Solutions. Nozomu asked Mars why he was following him, and don't let him say that he attacked him for asking that question. Mars felt uneasy and didn't know what to say to Nozomu. At this time, a girl who called him brother approached him and asked why he had invited this boy to such a remote place, and Mars asked her in turn, what was she doing here at all? She replied that when she was leaving the market, she saw him wandering around the city with a terrible face and decided to follow him, and it seems that she did it for a reason, because he was just trying to rob someone, and given his usual behavior, this is a logical conclusion, he obviously has no idea. He wondered how many people he and his aunt had had to apologize to for his antics. She is no longer allowed to go to her favorite store because of what he once arranged there. Because of such an older brother, all the weather conditions in their area are afraid of her. She always has to apologize to the neighbors for him, Then the girl looked at Nozoma and apologized for the fact that her brother annoyed him. Then she decided to introduce herself and said that her name was Ina Dickens, and she was the younger sister of this loafer. In turn, Nozombautis introduced himself as a classmate of Mars. Amena immediately offered Nozomu to come to their house as an apology. They have an inn with a tavern, and they can feed him dinner. After a short thought, Nozomu agreed. At the tavern, she told Hana that her brother was bothering someone again, and she had already scolded him. Hana looked at Nozoma and apologized for Mars, promising to buy him dinner to make up for it. Hana offered Nozom's signature dish, a digger rabbit steak with salad, on the house's bill. It had been a long time since he'd tasted such delicious food, and then Hana asked Ina to take the dishes to the kitchen, because new customers were expected soon. After the girl left, she asked Nozoma what he thought of Mars and Ina. Nozomu replied that he had only met Ina today, but it was immediately clear that she had a head on her shoulders and probably had something to do with Mars' behavior, and as for him, he didn't know anything. The guy didn't think too well of him and didn't try to hide it, but lately Mars he started to feel different, and Hana said that he hadn't been himself for months, but now everything was clear to her. Her heart immediately lightened. It was nice to know that he still wanted to be friends with someone, so Mars didn't mind Nozomu coming here. I don't think Mars will say that to his face, but he probably wants to be friends with him. It seems to her that he treated him badly, and now he doesn't know how to apologize. He never brought any of his bully friends here. Did he realize that he had been doing the wrong thing all along? But how much longer would they have to blush for him? The stepfather asked Mars, so he was not himself because of that guy. Did he really lose to him? To Mars' indignant look, he said that he has been replacing his father for many years, and even if he hates losing, that's not the point. He just wanted to know how he became so strong. Mars replied that Nozomu probably thought he was a lousy bully, and his stepfather said that his son went to the best school on the continent, Solmanati. Only he imagined who knows what about himself. And when he met the slightest obstacle, he began to worry and sulk at the whole world. He didn't change a bit, but during his antics he still never crossed the line of no return. However, he was never able to open up to anyone but them. It seems to him that the death of his mother and the departure of his father still pull him into the past. Even if Mars did it out of guilt, it was the first time in years that he had brought a boy of his own age to the tavern. Maybe his wayward son finally wanted to make a friend, and his stepfather had advised Mars to apologize to him. As Mars and Nozomu walked down the city street together, he apologized for everything he did earlier. Nozomu saw that Mars didn't want to involve his family in his dirty business. He saw a new side of him that he didn't want to show at school, although it wouldn't excuse his nasty behavior. Now Nozomu knows that this guy is not indifferent to other people's pain, and so he said that he forgives Mars. And he thought, which seems like he knows about his secret but doesn't want to expose it. Mars thanked Nozoma, and Nozoma said that it was not human to take offense at someone who was humiliated by his own sister in front of him. Mars ordered him to forget about it in a moment and put these memories out of his head. Ankari was glad that Nozomu and Mars were now best friends. When Nozoma was invited to the infirmary for lunch, Mars was already there. As soon as Nozom started talking to Mars more often, the atmosphere in the classroom changed, and the students who had always bullied him now only glared at him from afar, and Mars' friends stopped following him around. Gradually, he and Mars began to spend more and more time together. Although he still did not understand why Madame Henri was so excited about this, she was worried not only for him, but for Mars, and recently even said that he turns out to be a good boy. When asked by Mars why she decided to do this, the teacher replied that she noticed at the end of the second year that Mars stopped bullying Nozoma, as if after reflecting on his behavior, he decided that he needed to make up with him. Such a boy cannot be a bad boy. Madame Henri was terribly perceptive, and suddenly Iris came into the infirmary and asked if Dr. Norn was there. They were injured and needed help, and then she saw Nozoma and smiled, and said they hadn't seen each other for a long time. Mars asked his friend what he had done to her and why she was angry. Nozoma replied that they were not so close, that she was annoyed by any small things in their relationship. Iris was glad that she finally met Nozoma, because she was so busy with the exam that she couldn't even go find him, just as Iris was reminded that one of the girls in their class needed help after all. Dr. Norn put Thelma in a chair, and Iris explained that she was practicing magic, but the spell exploded right in her hand. Norn, after examining the wound, said that she had a lot of blood loss, but fortunately the muscles and bones are intact, and just in case the hand still needs to be treated with healing magic and medicine. If the discomfort persists after a few days, then the girl should come again. Mars thought that this girl was higher in rank, but she was still afraid, and this infuriated him. Iris told Thelma that it was better for her to hold back from magic training for a while. The girl thanked Iris for getting her to the infirmary, and Iris in turn thanked Nozomu for his help, who replied that he was here by accident. Iris said that since they were both here, they could talk to him alone somewhere, and Norn suggested that they go to the medicine closet. When the two young men were alone, Iris apologized to Nozomu. When the three of them were talking to Samiya, she started asking him rude questions, not knowing all the circumstances of the case, and she is now sorry. To which Nozomu replied that he should apologize to her, because he lost his temper and just left. At this time, Thelma entered the room. She said that she would also like to apologize to Nozomu, because he saved her life in the forest, and she just behaved terribly to him. Iris explained that Thelma was afraid of guys, and even those rumors about him did not add to her confidence. Nozomu replied that this is not a big deal, because she apologized, and besides, they were deceived by those who spread rumors. This is what really happens when Nozomu looks away from the past that he is trying to forget. He was still running away from reality. And after looking at the girls, Nozomu suggested that they return to the infirmary. There, he introduced Mars Dickens and homeroom teacher Henry to the girls. Iris noticed that Nozomu's friend Mars was a man with a temper. Then Iris turned to Nozomu and told him that Somiya's birthday was coming up. It seems that she told him about it, and the birthday party will be mostly the girls' classmates. But she also wants to invite him, and Nozomu asked, "The friend-child family's birthday party will surely be a lot of important people. Is Iris sure that he should be invited there?" Iris replied that only family and close friends would be there, and he was also Somiya's friend, so there would be no problems, and Somiya would be very happy, and then Nozomu agreed. Iris asked what about Mars, and he asked if she was bullying him, if he couldn't remember when he'd made friends with her or her sister, if he'd never even met her. And Henri said that he was a friend of Nozomu's, and it would make perfect sense to invite him to his birthday party. Mars replied that he was not one of those who go to demonstration receptions for the nobility. Iris said resentfully that she had already heard about Mars Dickens. From the way he speaks, you can tell that he's not just being followed around by problems. How come he's having lunch with someone like Nozomu Sab? They're a pretty weird duo. Maybe he's just as rude and mean as he looks, but at least he has some common sense. Iris said that Mars had it all written on his forehead, like a lonely stray dog. But of course she wouldn't mind if he refused the invitation, and if they did come, she would try to be the most welcoming hostess they had ever seen, and the food would be excellent too. Mars made it clear that he wouldn't be going to the birthday party, and Nozomu scolded his friend for being too hard on Thelma, to which Mars replied that people like her infuriate him the most. They are strong, but more timid than do, and Nozomu asked him if she is strong, then nothing, don't be afraid, it doesn't always work that way. Exorbitant power can be a cause for fear, but its magic is frighteningly strong. Mars thought that this girl must have been through a lot already. Nozomu was thinking about what to give Somiya for her birthday. He remembered that bracelet that was very dear to her, like a gift from his beloved sister. He decided that he could do something similar. He would take the copper parts of the belt that he no longer needed, and besides, he wanted to borrow something from his teacher. Nozomu patiently set about making a gift for Somiya. And a week later, he and Mars were standing in front of a huge gate next to a large stone palace. Ina also went with her brother, although she wasn't going to go to the birthday party at all. But after that very day, Ina was furious when she found out that Mars had scared Thelma. She unknowingly strengthened her body with kit techniques and tried to kill her brother. It probably had something to do with her going with him. The girls said that they were here to apologize to the girl who was bullied by her brother. He definitely wouldn't be able to ask for forgiveness, so I went with him. Mars asked Nozomu not to look at him like he was some kind of coward. He told Ina that he could handle it on his own, but she still followed him, and the girl said that if he went alone, he would do things again, and everything would only get worse. After that, the siblings began to fight terribly, and Nozomu barely managed to stop them. The servants came up to them and asked them not to make any noise under the gates of the mansion. Nozomu apologized for his companions and said that they had come to Samiliana's birthday party. The servants said they were sorry, but they didn't let any suspicious characters enter the house. Iris appeared at the back of the manor and called out to the servants that they were her friends and she would see them off and the girl could go back to her duties. After that, Iris escorted the guests into the house, scolding the maid for not letting out the guests she had invited herself. The guests entered the magnificent hall, and Iris asked Nozomu to introduce the sister of Mars. She gave her name, and Nozomu introduced Ina to Dickens. And Thelma Lion came over and introduced herself to Ina. Ina turned to her and said that she was very sorry that her stupid brother had caused her trouble the other day and she couldn't get away with this. She turned to her brother and asked him where his apology was, and Mars said that she wasn't his mother, which made it even harder for him to talk to her now. This girl. Anna exclaimed that he couldn't even apologize himself, so she had to do it first, and Mars replied that he could do without her. And Nozomu again had to calm down his friends. Iris was so amused that she doubled over with laughter. Nozomu had never heard her laugh so loudly before, and Iris apologized and said that the siblings must be very close. Then she invited Ina to honor her little sister's holiday with her presence. The girl replied that she had never been to a reception in such luxurious palaces, but simply decided to apologize for her brother, and she did not dress up at all, and she did not have a gift with her. Iris replied that only the closest people were invited to today's holiday, so she didn't have to worry about clothes. At such holidays, attention is much more important, and a guest who sincerely wishes Somiya a happy birthday will please her more than any gift. Mars said that since the hostess didn't mind, why not agree, because he paid for the gift. But Anna chose it. She chose different sweets and paid for them with Mars' pocket money taken by the force, which is why it can be considered a gift from both of them, and Ina agreed, and Iris escorted them to the hall. Before entering, the guards apologetically took their weapons, and Iris showed them the hall where the celebration would take place. She asked the guests to wait a bit. Soon the celebration will begin. There were guests in the huge hall, and 2 long tables were filled with all sorts of food and drinks. Somiya threw herself into Iris's arms, and everyone was happy to see them hug. Iris turned to the guests and asked them to forget about their usual duties for today and enjoy themselves. Then she thanked everyone for agreeing to celebrate the birthday of her little sister. Soon the guests were convinced of the delicacy of the prepared dishes, and Ina enviously said that she would be happy to serve such a thing in their tavern, although the ingredients of such dishes will make them obviously bankrupt. Mars explained to Nozomu that it was usually Etu who would come up with new dishes for their tavern. Nozomu turned to the birthday girl and congratulated her on her birthday. Somiya thanked the guests for coming to her party, and she asked Nozomu to tell her who came with him. Mars and Anna introduced themselves and said that they were invited by Lady Iris. The girl asked me to call her Somiya. For her, the simpler, the better. The siblings started arguing again, and Nozomu realized that it was a common thing for them to do, and it seemed that Somiya was only amused by their screams, and Thelma was having a hard time. But there was nothing wrong with that. Nozomu and Iris' eyes met, and the girl asked him what was wrong and, seeing a small box in his hand, asked if this was his gift to Somiya. The young man confirmed her guess and said that he would give it to the birthday girl a little later. Iris sincerely thanked Nozomu for coming to her little sister's party. They celebrate Somiya's birthday every year, but today she looks especially happy because he is here. Somiya is extremely perceptive. She sees the true intention of people as well as her. Even though she has spent so many years in high society, she is not used to tolerate people getting to know her just for the sake of profit. Their mother died as soon as she gave birth to a baby girl, which is why she tried to replace her. But Somiya still misses her and always gets sad as her birthday approaches. But today is very different. She is sure that this is the result of meeting Nozomu. Somiya talks a lot about him. Even in the mansion, she said that she met a strange but kind boy. Nozomu was surprised, but said that he still doubted that the girl had changed so much just because of him. But Iris assured him that Somiya was really very sensitive, and for example, these servants had been living with them since they came to Arcatum, but even they were somewhat biased towards them. That's why, while they're in town, she asks him to forget about Somiya's status. And Nozomu was just thinking about how to change his attitude towards her, but if so, he will try. But he does not think that he can be called kind at all. Iris added that it's not just that he agreed to do what she asked. Most people, when they hear about their mother's death, throw insincere words of sympathy or try to cheer them up with inappropriate jokes. And he didn't. He put himself in her shoes and decided not to try to smooth things over. The people who judge him at the academy don't know what he really is at all. To be honest, he's a bit too kind and stays at the academy because he's worried about his childhood friend Lisa, so she's sure that the rumors that are going around in the academy are just dirty gossip, although she doesn't have any proof. But her gut tells her that. Iris assured them that her instincts were rarely wrong, and at that time they were called. The sister and brother continued to argue, and Nozomu decided to stop Mars. Just as someone rang the bell outside and the maid saw a man at the gate who apologized for visiting and asked to tell the hostess that he had important business with her. The maid replied to the master that the manor was celebrating the birthday of the younger sister of the mistress today, so she couldn't announce the arrival of a new guest, but since he had urgent business with the mistress, she would inform him of his arrival after the reception, and for now, she asked him to refrain from further attempts to enter the mansion. The stranger replied that he understood that it was not polite to show up at their house in the middle of the evening, but he still asked to inform the hostess about his visit. Seeing that he was not going to be allowed to enter the estate, the man used magic and instantly moved to the castle. At the moment when the program of the holiday was announced, a stranger in a black tailcoat entered the hall, and Nozomu asked Iris if she had invited this person, to which the girl replied in the negative. The man apologized for such a rude intrusion and said that he was the butler of one of the noble families of another state and his name was Lugato. Then he made sure that the owners of this estate, Iris and Somiliana, were in front of him. Iris asked Lugato what the purpose of his visit was, and explained that it would be unwise to give a warm welcome to a man who came to their house unannounced and did not even mention his master's name. The butler agreed with the lady and expressed a desire to speak with Lady Iris and Lady Samia alone, to which Nozomu told him to introduce himself properly, and the man said that he was a servant of the Widzard family from the Dizard Empire, a snow country in the northwest of the continent, and the purpose of his visit was to convey an extremely important message from his lady. Nozomu knew that it was an extremely powerful power, founded by 7 tribes that had been persecuted by other races in the past, and this state did not conduct diplomatic relations with other countries, and did not interfere in their politics. As far as he remembered, 20 years ago during the Great Invasion, only the Desert Empire managed to repel the hordes of demons who crossed their borders. Butler said that he had come to return a treasure that they had once lent to the Francilde family, the crucible of spiritual flame. This treasure, which allowed him to capture the souls of living beings and use their power, originally belonged to the family he served. The butler looked at the birthday girl and said that now this artifact is fused with the soul of Lady Somiliana, and he must return it. These are the terms of the contract. Nozomu suddenly noticed that the room was filled with an incredible amount of magic that came from this strange man. The butler's magic circle covered the entire Francilde family mansion. It was like a barrier magic that weakens all enemies within a certain territory. The butler expressed regret that he had to resort to such methods. However, in order to recover the artifact, he must extract the soul of Lady Somiliana. Iris explained that 300 years ago, the head of their family made a contract with the Widzard family for the spiritual flame furnace, and she thought that she knew this story like the back of her hand. But this was not the case. The butler took the paper out of his pocket and showed the contract the girl had mentioned. It said that the magical items owned by the Widzard family would be loaned to the Francilde family in exchange for the agreed amount, and the Francilde family would return them after the specified period, as proof of the mutual agreement and as a symbol of the contract itself. An oath bracelet would be made, which the Francilde family would keep even after the expiration date. This bracelet will summon a performer from the Widzard family to complete the contract and return the magic items. At the bottom of the contract was a seal with the Francilde family crest, which can only be used by the head of the family, and the envoy of the Widzard family was determined to extract the soul itself during the return of the artifact, and therefore Lady Somiliana must die. The butler fixed his gaze on the bracelet that was placed on Somia's wrist, the familiar of the contract responsible for the successful execution of the contract, and the guardian of the artifact appeared in the room. The butler calmly said that everything would end without pain and suffering. Both sisters were subjected to the magic of the shackles of darkness, a spell that binds the target with black chains that emit light. Iris desperately called for Thelma's help. She applied a 4-fold seal consisting of circles of 4 elements, forming a complex barrier. Each attribute circulates without rejection, eventually forming a strong barrier, and the butler was surprised to say that although he had lived a long life, but had not yet seen someone who could use a spell of this level, and the magic of Lady Iris is also amazing, instant activation could lead to a decrease in its effectiveness because it depends on Maksekabi. However, she was able to detain the familiar, even if only for a short time. Still, trying to stop the familiar won't help them. After that, magic blades launched by the evil butler flew towards the girls. Thelma knew that if her spell was broken, Somia would die. This girl was the sister of her best friend, and as a child, so much magic was awakened inside her that she could not control it, and she was afraid. She felt helpless. Because of this, only dark thoughts were constantly on her mind. Even after entering Eklas, nothing had changed. Despite her abilities that allowed her to master the 4 elements perfectly, she didn't know how, with such an abnormal potential for magic, to get along with others. Iris was her guiding star in the night sky, and Somia was the sun that dispels the darkness. These two were her only light in the darkness of loneliness. While controlling the swords, the butler had said that not only did the girl have a talent for magic, but she had no bendable willpower, and Thelma felt that it was becoming increasingly difficult to control the power of magic. If she moved, the Reaper would break out of her spell. At this time, Mars threw a swift punch at the magic wall. Thelma remembered that this guy didn't like her, but Mars had asked her to focus on her spell, and he would deal with the old bastard himself. Nozomu decided to distract the criminal's attention, because with his suppressed abilities he was of little use, and without weapons, he would simply get in their way. But at this time, Mars asked him to bring their swords. Iris tossed him the keys to the weapons storage area, and Nozomu dashed into it. Everyone understood that this butler had a rank of at least ska and was not inferior in skill to Professor Jihad, and the professor could defeat 100 people at once alone. Only a few people on Arkmill were capable of such a thing. The friends understood that they had to first deal with the familiar of the contract. But how could they destroy it? If the source of the summoning was the contract itself, the chances of ripping it to shreds were extremely slim, and the old man wouldn't give them time to do so. They couldn't get close to him either. There was too much distance between them, but Iris was sure that they would still win. The girl asked Mars to cover Thelma. While Nozomu was thinking that magic and swords are completely different types of combat, Lugato seems to have the same level of skill as his mentor. Iris and the guys are unlikely to be able to beat him. If he didn't release the monster inside of him, it was unlikely that they would be able to win. But if they were afraid of his power and disowned him, considering him a monster, if he showed them his power, it would definitely happen. Then he would be all alone again. The attack of Mars ended badly for him. Lugato's blow sent him flying several meters away, and Thelma decided that it was time to finish. The familiar seemed ready to break free of the spell. Somia stared at the Reaper in fright, bound by the magic chain, while Iris tried to get closer to him. The familiar was already very close to Somia, and the girl was trembling with fear. Lugato watched calmly, confident of success. Suddenly, a shadow flashed through the air, and Somia's bracelet shattered into small pieces. The chains binding the girl fell, and the familiar's skull rolled on the floor. Nozomu mentally turned to the master and asked what he should do. The butler looked at the youth in surprise and said that he had never thought that a familiar could be defeated with a single blow. Nozomu took a quick look around the battlefield, and Mars whispered that he was a little late. Nozomu realized that Mars and Thelma were no longer in a position to fight. Lugano turned to the young man and said that the purpose of the familiar is to ensure that the agreement is fulfilled at all costs. As long as he has the contract, he will be reborn again and again. And Nozomu asked the old man, "Is he really going to take Somia's soul?" The butler replied that it was his mistress's order, and Nozomu said that he was completely unaware of the circumstances and responsibilities of the Fransold family, who lived 300 years ago, and yet the only condition of the contract was the return of the spirit flame furnace, and there was no word about taking Somia's soul. He couldn't accept that a debt that the girl knew nothing about would have to be paid off by her, and Lugato replied that he didn't know either that the crucible had merged with Lady Similiana's soul until he saw it firsthand, and he had to admit that his mistress didn't attach much importance to the contract, meaning, or rather, it doesn't interest her at all. The crucible of spiritual flame has fused with Lady Similiana's soul and can no longer be separated from it, but that doesn't mean that their contract is no longer valid, and even if the lady is not interested in it, she will not be silent if they unilaterally violate their mutual commitment, and Iris replied to the old man that she doesn't care about anything this. She has no intention of giving up Somia's life. The girl turned to Nozomu and asked him how many more times he could use that secret technique, and the young man replied that it would be enough for a couple of rounds, and he would reach the limit. And Iris asked him to destroy the black ball that controls the familiar. She firmly said that as long as they had the strength, they should fight. Lugato looked resolutely at the young people and said that in their state, strength is valued above all else. It is it that can put an end to an unresolved contradiction, so if the terms of this contract do not suit them, let them prove that they are stronger than him. After that, the room was once again filled with magical energy. Under intense pressure, Nozomu and Iris rushed forward. The butler was very strong and had no intention of giving in while swinging his sword. However, Nozomu noticed that the old man's movements were too ragged, and this was his chance. The young man realized that he was superior to this man in pure swordsmanship. But with an incredible amount of techniques, physical strength, and experience, he made up for the difference in skill. There were too many tricks up his sleeve for this butler, who had told Nozomu that his reflexes were excellent, but the key technique seemed to leave much to be desired. The battle continued, but neither side had a significant advantage. Lugano used the magic skill again, dealing Nozomu a massive blow. He couldn't understand why the old man had so much power. Nozomu asked Iris how many more times she could attack at full strength, and the girl replied that she still had enough for one time. He told her firmly, looking her straight in the eye, that a plan had been set in motion, told so that Lugato would not hear it. It was a pure gamble. He and Iris had never even trained together, and Lugato was sure that they couldn't break through by force and were doomed to die. Iris used an abyssal throw, a magic that mimics throwing a spear, and Nozomu decided to bet on Lugato's train of thought, his attempts to predict their actions, and he was sure to be wrong. The butler chuckled and said that if this was their trump card, they should have waited at least 3 more seconds. Obviously, he had overestimated them. Nozomu decided that Lugato's fighting style was very similar to that of Iris, a mage fighter with excellent physical abilities and many magical techniques, however. Since he was much better at swordsmanship than Lugato, the old man was afraid that he would engage him in close combat again, and forgot about his ability to use Kihei. If Lugato gets into the range of his equipment, he will have to defend himself, and now everything depends on him. Now it's time to use the lunar eclipse. This is Iris' strongest technique, a key element of their plan. At the place where the butler was, a giant pit was formed, and the young people were surprised to see that Lugato was missing. They, who were bound by magic chains, saw a bunch of bats flying out of the pit. Obviously, this butler was a vampire. On the continent of Arkmill, there are many different races, but this one has the highest potential among the others. Incredible physical abilities, huge magical power, long livers with a huge range of possibilities, and only a sword made of mithril filled with magical power can kill this vampire. Turning into a bat is a unique ability of vampires. Also, their characteristic feature is the crimson eyes. The number of vampires has decreased significantly over the past few centuries, but legends about them still go around the continent. They say that in one night a vampire turned all the inhabitants of his city into monsters, and another vampire seduced royalty. Because of her abilities and physical disability, due to the need to drink the blood of others for survival, they were feared and persecuted. The Dizard Empire was founded by those who were so persecuted, and several of Lugato's characteristics hinted to the young people that he was a vampire. If Nozomu had immediately removed the ability suppression, then Mars and Thelma wouldn't have received unnecessary injuries, and things might have ended differently. Nozomu again felt nothing but regret. Iris looked at the resurrected familiar and ordered it to stop and take her soul instead of her sister's. To Iris, she was the most precious treasure that gave her the strength to live, and she couldn't let Somiya die. Nozomu thought about how Master Shikano herself wanted to die, and he respected her wish, but right now he doesn't want to just watch this girl die. The chains that bound Nozomu's abilities clattered down at his feet, and he was forced to free himself. Lugato looked at Nozomu in surprise and asked, "What is the meaning of this?" A sudden thought flashed through his mind, even though it couldn't be real. This youth was completely different. His aura was simply monstrous. The familiar was facing Nozomu, but there was a hint of hesitation in its stance. Not only was the butler surprised by Nozomu's incredible amount of ki, but his friends were also surprised. A mere human couldn't possibly have such incredible strength. Lugato, who tried to block Nozomu's attack, realized that this guy was too fast. There was no doubt that this kid was stronger than him, and Nozomu sent ki into his katana and made a huge explosion. It was an advanced technique, the huge jaws of Moros. Nozomu continued his aerial attack, and they engaged the butler in close combat. The old man defended himself fiercely, miraculously fending off the enemy's attacks. But his skill wasn't enough. He hoped that if he didn't slack off, he would be able to counter this youth with something. It seemed to him that it was too early to give up, and Nozomu only increased the pressure, his cutting blow reaching the target. The vampire was seriously injured and staggered back. A look of doom came into Lugato's eyes. Nozomu used the Phantom Blade skill, which tore through the air. The butler at the last moment tried to cast a magic defense, throwing out the palms of his hands in front of him. But his magic was powerless. Nozomu's form was soaked through with blood, and he could no longer resist the power of Tiamat that he decided to release. His body was wearing out right before his eyes, and Iris, seeing the vampire's defeat, rushed to Somiya. The sisters hugged each other and wept, and the vampire lay bleeding, but not dying. It was necessary to destroy the brain and heart, because after all, the blade that cut Lugato Nozomu was not made of mithril. The vampire, barely moving his lips, asked Nozomu not to worry. He won, and therefore now Lugato will not touch Lady Similiana. The dragon inside Nozomu was released. He opened his eyes and saw that he was in his own bed. It was just a dream, and next to him were Iris and Somiya. Nozomu asked the girls how long he had slept and was told that he had been in a dream for half a day, and they were restless because he suddenly lost consciousness. Because Lugato could not fulfill the terms of the contract, Somiya's soul was no longer his goal, and he returned to the Dizard Empire to report everything to his mistress. Lugato's body parts were fused together in a couple of hours, thanks to his vampire regeneration abilities. After treating their wounds, Thelma and Mars went to the academy, but they would come back after class, and Ina returned home safely, after which Iris expressed a desire to tell all of them why their family made a secret agreement with the Wadzart family. It all started 300 years ago, and at that time, the kingdom of Forsen was in a great war of succession, plunging the country into chaos. The direct heirs of the king came into conflict with another branch of the family supported by foreign powers. The Franksild family, which belonged to the direct faction, gradually weakened and decided to seek help from their neighbors. The Wazart family from the Dzara Empire, although they did not have any diplomatic relations, secretly using their supernatural abilities and magical items. The Franksilds, the opposing forces, were destroyed, and one of these items was the Crucible of Spiritual Flame, which gave the owner great power at the expense of other souls. According to the old butler who witnessed the events, the head of the Franksild family made a secret treaty, and its duration of 300 years is explained by the fact that he was afraid of the revival of hostile forces. She has already contacted the main house about this matter and thinks that soon the two families will discuss the situation and come to some agreement. Iris was sure that her ancestors were desperate to do such a thing. Apparently, even the head of their family wasn't able to separate this magic item from Somia's soul. Most likely, the crucible was there at the behest of their mother. Because the baby sister was born prematurely, then Iris said that they got them all into trouble, but they still helped, and she doesn't want to hide anything from her rescuers. Iris thanked the boys from the bottom of her heart for keeping Somia alive, and she was very grateful for that. Mars asked Nozomu what the hell he was doing. Towards the end of the battle, he knew that he was much stronger than they say in the academy, but his power seemed crazy at the time. Nozomu replied that when he was released from the suppression of his abilities, he realized that he was capable of such things at the end of his second year. But he could not control his own powers. His ki is constantly at maximum, it is simply impossible to restrain it. That's why he could not use such techniques. Once he turned an entire boulder into dust, and this cannot be used against people. Then Mars asked him, are all his techniques deadly? Nozomu thought about it and decided not to tell them that he was a dragon slayer. Then he remembered something and turned to Somia and said that he never gave her her gift. With that, he handed her the bell, saying that he had used her bracelet as a sample. But this was the first time he had done it. Maybe it wasn't very good, but he did it from the bottom of his heart. Nozomu felt good because he was able to protect his comrades.